Progress.
All right, good evening and welcome to the December 19th, 2024 meeting of the Brookline School Committee. I apologize for the condition of my voice and for having to wear a mask. I hope that everyone can still understand me. And we have two board members right now, Mariana Braga and Helen Charlupski, in addition to the members you can see in front of you. All right, let's start with our administrative business. I'll begin by moving the consent agenda. Do I have a second for that? Thank you, Suzanne. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? We have past records, acceptance of gifts and grants, student trips, and change order for the Pierce School project. I'll mention that.
Sorry, because I'm just getting settled. So the consent agenda is the minutes from last time.
Acceptance of gifts and grants, Driscoll student trips.
Yep, okay, I have it here.
BHS student trip, and the Pierce change order. Any questions or comments before we vote on the consent agenda? Jesse?
Does it, again, I'm trying to get settled here. Does it include the minutes?
It does.
From last time. So I do have a comment about the minutes, but I'll need a second to get my notes. Thank you.
I'll just make a comment while we're waiting. Whoops. I love the farm school, so I'm glad that we're back on schedule and sending our students there. It's a great program, so.
Yeah, okay. So being new to school committee, I'm not sure exactly what process would be if there's something in the minutes that needs, that's accurately transcribed, but potentially still something that needs a comment. So is that acceptable for me to?
Go ahead and mention it. Yeah, you could also just talk about it with Betsy. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
With Betsy.
So
before the meeting, if you want.
So would that mean if Jesse has something that he wants to say about the minutes, that he would move to not approve them right now?
You could do that. Usually, it would be fine to if you'd like a revision. Like if once Betsy has circulated the minutes to us, you could just write into her about it. And normally, if it's anything controversial, she'll just amend it before we vote.
But I think you're talking about the minutes.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that in reading through the minutes, there is a section that is about something that happened at the last meeting that is accurately transcribed, but I still think needs a comment.
Okay.
And so it's sort of.
Propose an edit to it.
Oh, is that?
You can propose an edited version for a vote if you like.
Should I do that now or do it or do we?
Feel free to do it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just read a sentence or two here. This relates to the preamble that was introduced by the chair before public comment at our last meeting. And I wish to note that those comments were made solely by the chair and that those comments were not necessarily representative of the entire school committee. Again, I'm trying to be truthful, 100% here, so there's no confusion. And furthermore, in my reading of, again, the accurately transcribed minutes, there are two references within those minutes that should be noted as potentially problematic in the import. The first reference in the statement is, and I'll quote, "as part of an organized effort to pressure our staff and silence one of our students," unquote. It is important to note that no evidence was provided that all the speakers were part of an organized effort, unless by organized, the preamble before public comment had prior knowledge that some organization had organized all the speakers. The only other common denominator was that the speakers were all Jewish. I don't believe the chair meant that. All the speakers were organized by religious affiliation. The second reference in the statement is that, quote, the public comment contributed to an atmosphere in which BHS leaders were not certain they could keep their staff and students safe, unquote. There was no threat stated by any speaker at public comment, and no assessment by anyone stated that a risk existed. The linkage between the public comment in the prior meeting and safety was not, and to this day has not been substantiated. Thus, this statement left alone in the minutes leaves somewhat confusing trail in our official records. So I would ask that if possible, these comments be added as a addendum or revision, perhaps, to the public comments summary of the minutes.
I wonder if your comments could be part of the minutes of this meeting rather than amending the minutes of the last meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
I have a question actually on that, Jesse. Was it not stated by the BHS head of school that there was some concern? I thought that was stated to all of us that there was some concern about safety. Perhaps I'm misremembering the order of those
was.
statements, but I do recall there being some statement.
That statement was made and has been documented. There was no substantiation nor proof, evidence of any potential risk. It was just a statement that was made in the context of postponing the scheduling of the Doors event. So to your point, Val, that would be the second time or potentially a repetition of the same statement that was made by BHS leadership at the time. But again, without any evidence in any way that a true threat, God forbid, to anyone existed.
All right, so thank you, Jesse. So that's now part of this meeting's record. All right, I don't think we ever moved to a vote on the consent agenda. I think maybe we're ready to do that now, unless someone else has a comment. All right, Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. All right, the second part of our administrative business is simply, as we've been doing for the past several meetings, posting draft school district calendars. The 4 that are posted this week are the same as what we had 2 weeks ago. They range all the way from adding Adolf Hitler as a new Category 1 holiday to removing all Category 1 holidays. This is just to comply with our own policy of posting calendars for the meeting before the one at which we might vote on them. So we're going to be discussing these later this evening under Section 5. No vote is scheduled, but the discussion will happen then. All right, let's move on to Kieran for the student report.
All right, thank you, Dr. Liu. So this is this month's December's school committee report for life at BHS. Just as a preamble, I think that, I can speak for most students or all students when I say that besides the month of June, December is usually our favorite month, just because, we do have 11 days off this year at least. But to begin, one of the biggest things that happened at BHS in the last month was our annual Powerpuff game between girls in the class of 2025 and the class of 2026. And I'm happy to report that the class of 2025 has reigned supreme once more on the Powerpuff field. So the Powerpuff game was held a month ago on November 26th, which I believe was just a day before we all departed for Thanksgiving break. The seniors defeated the juniors 9-7, with both teams, both Nick Rothstein, who an English teacher and the coach of the juniors, and Clifton Jones, a guidance counselor and the coach of the senior team, both actually remarked that this was one of the closest Powerpuff games we've ever seen in school history. So, I am proud to be on the winning side, if you will. And, just as an aside, seniors actually made history this year, the class of 2025, as one of the only BHS graduating classes to win as both juniors and seniors. So as you can see from some of these pictures, Powerpuff is always a very spirited game. It can get physical, and everybody really gives full 100% effort, on the field playing. And it's always just an amazing environment to watch, to take part in. At BHS, for example, on the third floor, we kind of sort of plastered out blue everywhere for the senior class and red on the second floor for the junior class. But one of the biggest things about the Powerpuff game is that it really brings all BHS students together. I can say that one of the biggest themes of the game is unity. And beyond just seeing the whole, junior class and senior class united in red and blue respectively, everybody can really come together to just celebrate, both the players, both the school, and both everybody who contributed, took part in, and won or lost the event. But it's really always a big highlight of the year. Yesterday actually was one of the biggest events as well. We hosted our first day of assembly of the year, and this was the day of disability education. So this assembly took place from A, C, and T blocks, the first 3 blocks of the day. And really it was dedicated to informing students and teachers through lessons developed by students and teachers about what it means to have a disability at the high school and how we can better support students and teachers with disabilities at the high school. For A and C blocks, which were the first 2 blocks of the day, the lessons really centered around telling our stories. So students with disabilities, ranging from physical disabilities, neurodivergent disabilities, as well as teachers who had such disabilities, told their stories, said what it was like to have disabilities both at the high school, both in life, and really what we can do as a student body, as well as just a school community, to continue supporting, continue making our school more accessible to all students and faculty. T block, the lessons diverged depending on the grade. As a senior, we learned about accessibility at BHS, so how we can make the building more accessible, what aspects of the building, what aspects of the curriculum are inaccessible to students with mental or physical disabilities. And other grades learned more about, for example, they had information sessions about various types of disabilities that students and faculty may have at the high school. So for example, you can see from this picture here that one of the stands, which actually took place during D and E block, these weren't mandatory blocks for the Day of Disability, but certain classes were able to attend informational booths in the atrium dedicated to, for example, an informational slide about autism, what it is, how it impacts, people, how it impacts the brain. And these were actually put on by, as you can see from, it's hard to see on the picture, but this particular stand was put on by the Neuroscience Club. So various student organizations at the high school were actually able to develop presentations about, or that related to disability education at the high school, which was another way that really the community was able to come together. And finally, the Latinx Club a few weeks ago hosted their annual Latinx Fiesta. It's an event that's always attended by dozens of students, parents, as well as just general community members. I, for example, actually met the grandmother and grandfather of one of my peers. So really when I say that, it brings together all people from across the community, it really does bring people together from across the community. There was dancing, there was music. My favorite highlight of the evening was limboing and a musical chairs competition. That was certainly a spirited game. And then there were also speeches by club advisors, as well as students who were part of the club, that really just spoke to what it meant to be Latino at the high school, and also, how we can see our heritage, or how we can see Latino and Latina heritage represented in the curriculum, as well as just coming together, dancing, singing, just in service of community. I also wanted to, just before I wrap the student report up for the month, is just that in a few weeks when we come back from break, the Brookline High School Student Government is actually hosting a student government assembly. This is an annual lesson during T block in which various members from the BHS Legislature, Student Council, and Judiciary, which is dedicated to supporting BHS student rights in the handbook, can all come together and can answer any student questions about their rights in the handbook, educate them on what their rights actually are, what BHS government does, how you can get in touch with them. And that's coming up on January 9th. So mark your calendar. calendars. Happy holidays to everybody. You too. Yeah. And that concludes the student report for December.
Thanks, Kieran. Yeah, happy holidays to you too. Are there any questions or comments? And if you're remote, just speak up because I can't see you. Yeah, Sarah. Yeah.
Just thank you for that, as always. It's the tone that's so right when you speak. You talk about community, you talk about sort of joy of learning. Thank you.
All right, we'll turn it over to Dr. Guillory for the superintendent's report.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? So as we begin, I don't feel like I can, my mic is working. There we go. As we begin tonight, I want to take a moment to acknowledge some of the press that we're seeing about the district and financial or fiscal mismanagement as such. The district will be taking or sharing out some information about that, I'm sure right after the first of the year or when we return back. But I do want to acknowledge that presence, as well as share out that we have an internal working group. I'm calling it a cross-departmental group that has come together that's made up of diverse members of our organization, including student services, teaching and learning, as well as administration and finance, and it also has principal representation there. And the initial task is to come together to identify ways to look at our alignment of our some of our larger grants right now. And then the group will expand to also include more diverse members as well when we start talking about how then do we close our structural gap through the remainder of the school year, while we also prepare for a very tough FY26 budget as well. So I just want to begin with that. Val, is your hand up?
It is. It's about this. So before you went to the rest.
Sure.
Is the deputy superintendent for OSS on this working group?
Both she and I are advisors to it, or in an advisory capacity.
Okay. And all the other deputy superintendents sit on this?
Two of them do, and it depends on the bodies of work. So the idea is to then reach out and expand. And so we're actually talking about that. We had a communication today, and we'll be expanding it a little bit more given the volume of work that needs to happen.
Thanks.
Andy? Oh, sure.
Just wanted to ask, how do you envision the school committee interacting with the members of this working group?
So I think as we get into January at our finance, there'd be an opportunity for them to report out on the work that's actually happening there. So that's the way I see that happening, but certainly open to anyone wanting to engage with them as well.
Just one more follow-up on that. Just a question on the mandate. Was it related to the allegations of financial mismanagement, or was it related to structural deficit issues, or both?
Structural deficit.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, that's the challenge that we presently have right now is we're running hot, and we know that we're running hot now, so how then do we start course correcting right now? And so there are some things that we have to work on internally to get that cleared up, but our commitment is to get that rectified and at least communicate what the delta is between what our approved budget is versus what our current expenses are. All right. So our superintendent's update for tonight: kindergarten registration for 25-26. The online registration for students entering kindergarten opens January 8th. Kindergarten is an important milestone for everyone involved, and our students and our staff is here to support families in this transition. The Office of Registration and Enrollment is committed to ensuring that all of our families have a smooth and successful transition into their first day of kindergarten. All families will have multiple opportunities to engage with our staff throughout the registration process and are happy to work to support each and every family with the specific needs that they have. Our pre-registration for all other grades opens March 1st, 2025. Discovering Justice mock trials. Dr. Jody Fortuna, our Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, was summoned for jury duty at the Discovering Justice mock trial event earlier this month. Discovering Justice is a civic education nonprofit that works with students to introduce them to the workings of the legal system and to help them explore the ideals of justice. Discovering Justice is an after-school partnership at Hayes, Runkle, and FRR. Hayes and Runkle had their trials at Mockley, the Moakley Courthouse, and FRR had its mock trial across the street at the Brookline District Court. This year's case concerned students' First Amendment rights and peaceful assembly. The student attorneys did an outstanding job pleading their cases. Brookline's CPAC Summer Camp Fair. The CPAC is hosting a free summer camp fair January 11th at the Florida Ruffin Ridley School cafeteria. This fair will feature a camp and program will feature a variety, of camp and program representatives who specialize in supporting children with special needs, providing families with valuable resources and opportunities to explore a meaningful and fun summer option platform for their children. A parental workshop, Navigating the Cyber World. I'm pleased to say that a number of our PTOs have engaged with a variety of professionals in and around the greater Boston area as it pertains to cell phones as well as technology. And so this, again, is another opportunity for our families to engage deeper in this notion of navigating the cyber world. So on January 15th from 7 to 8 p.m., the Office of Student Services has organized this workshop. Again, the notion of challenges and dangerous situations that may arise through the use of internet, social media, and smartphones. It's an opportunity for staff and parents to become aware of popular apps, social media sites, and programs that are used by youth online. And Corey Marshburn is the featured speaker. So we'll make sure we share out the link and information for that as it gets closer. And last but not least, we want to welcome to the district Johnny Reed to the PSB as a Harvard Graduate School of Education Superintendent Fellow. Some of you may have met him at the curriculum open house where you were looking at the finalists, looking at the choices for selection. So many of you know that students that are pursuing their doctorates from Harvard often do internships at a variety of districts around the Commonwealth, and we are fortunate to have Johnny with us working in our teaching and learning department there. So with that concludes our superintendent's report, and like Kieran, I want to wish all a festive holiday season of rejuvenation and relaxation as we speed forth into 2025. Thank you all very much.
All right, thanks, Dr. Guillory. Does anyone have any questions for the superintendent? All right, I see that. Oh, I do see one. Jesse, go ahead.
There, I got it. Question for Dr. Guillory. The school committee received a fairly large number of letters from parents about programs this year, especially in the special needs area that you're probably aware of in terms of funding and continuation of those programs. One came up recently about music therapy and others. Is that a prime concern of this new financial working group, and how quickly do you think they can move to bring some of these programs that either started at the beginning of the year but have been stopped because bills didn't get paid, or never happened this year, but parents are still waiting? I say it also because there's a CPAC meeting tomorrow, and they're going to ask me.
Absolutely. So let me equip you with it. So there are a number of the music program that you mentioned specifically. That contract has actually gone to the vendor for signature. So OSS and OAF have been working to unclog the queue on some of the contracts that have been outstanding. And so with the procurement process, it requires vendors to have insurance, statements of work, all of those types of things. And so as those come up, the real challenge is going to be for us is identifying the funding source to pay for those, because right now, as I said, our budget is running pretty hot. So as the funds become available, those will start coming back online. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, this takes us to public comment. We have tonight 19 speakers signed up for public comment. So we'll follow our usual procedure of hearing from the first 5 speakers right now, and then the rest we'll hear from toward the end of the meeting. I'm thinking that we can forego our subcommittee and liaison reports, which are scheduled for 8:40. So that's, if we stay on track, that's when the remaining speakers would be heard. All right, our first speaker tonight is Lily Glickstein, and everyone has 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Lily Glickstein, and I am a 4th grade teacher at Driscoll School. I'm here to appeal to the school committee to open up a new section for next year's 4th and 5th grade classes. This is my 7th year at Driscoll, and I am teaching the largest class I have ever had at 24 4th graders. The other 4th grade classes have 24 and 25 students. Our 3rd grade has closed one of their 3 sections due to low enrollment, and those sections are already at 22 and 25 students and only set to grow. 4th grade parent Carl Borelowitz did some digging and learned that at least 2 of these classes have already exceeded the limit of the building code maximum capacity. Teachers are often hesitant to press the issue of class size because in doing so, it looks like we're claiming incompetence rather than advocating for fair working conditions. But with such a pressing issue affecting not only the quality of the education we provide, but also the sheer physical limitations of our room, I, on behalf of all the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers, feel it is critical to speak out. We are all reaching the ceiling of the district guidelines for class size, and there has been no discussion with staff about how we will be supported now or next year. We have been told that according to district guidance, when a class is between 22 and 26 students, you may ask for support in the form of an extra para in your classroom. Anecdotal evidence suggests that asking for that support will be fruitless. With that said, I can assure you that the last thing that would help is putting more people in these rooms. Maddeningly, the classroom right next to mine is in fact empty. I send student groups into that room as a quiet space. However, during the blocks that I do not have para support, it is a gamble to allow students in there on their own and trust that they will complete their work independently. The irony of spilling my enormous class into a completely empty classroom is not lost on me, and I hope it is not lost on you. This year, I am unable to use my rug space for lessons. 24 students cannot comfortably sit on a classroom-sized rug. And we are losing valuable connection time during morning meeting because several students must sit at their desks and therefore outside the group. The sheer number of desks in my room means that students are constantly on top of one another, bumping into chairs and desks, knocking over their aluminum water bottles, dropping their belongings, or getting into small arguments. Furthermore, bigger class sizes mean the amount of students that need social emotional support is higher. This, of course, takes time away from academics and overloads our staff. Not only that, but the space outside our classrooms is becoming a challenge as well. For some reason, I only have 12 cubbies in front of my classroom, which is not even enough for a regular year. I am forced to commandeer my neighbor's cubbies across the hall. Thankfully, she agreed to use some down the hall next to yet another empty classroom. This is a risk for her as a teacher because those students are less supervised during transition times. We teach in this big, beautiful 4-section school, and yet we are not utilizing the space in any kind of logical or efficient way. While this is a very pressing issue in the 3rd and 4th grades this year, it is not limited to Driscoll specifically. I have heard of other schools in the district which are being pressured to collapse sections as well. This means the quality of Brookline education as a whole would be diminished. I am aware that the budget is the driving force in making the decisions that lead to large class sizes, but there has to be a way to cut corners that does not directly affect children's education and teachers' ability to effectively connect with, educate, and grow their students. Brookline staff is amazing. I may be biased, but I think the Driscoll staff is particularly incredible. All of us teachers are making it work because that is our job and we do it well. However, there is a limitation to our staff's scrappiness and to the classroom square footage. On behalf of the entire Driscoll staff, I want to thank the parents for working so hard to support their children and their children's teachers. My hope is that the upper administration and school committee show the same support and dedication to the children of Brookline by addressing the class size issue immediately. Thank you very much. This letter is co-signed by over 45 members of our staff, so at the risk of sounding like an Oscar speech, just know that I'm supported by the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teams, along with many members of our support staff who will be working with these large groups of kids in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Glickstein. Next up, we have Max Eagle and Oliver Rose.
Hi, my name is Max Eagle. I am a 3rd grader at Driscoll School in 3S. Our class has 25 students. It is hard to have that many students because it is a small room and we barely fit. We only have one teacher. We have to spend time waiting for our turn, and while we wait, we read a book. Our classroom can get really loud. Sometimes I take my work out to the hallway because it can be hard to concentrate with so many kids in one space, especially when there are a lot of questions. Since we have to spread out in the room, kids who have desks in the corner can't see the screen, so we have to sit on the rug and not our desk. Our teacher, Miss 70, does a really good job of teaching all 25 of us at one time. It also gets pretty loud in PE, and because our teacher has to stop so many times to get kids' attention, we end up not having lots of time to play the game. Learning in our class and going to specials with 25 students is really hard. It can be very loud, and we end up losing a lot of time on different activities. Our grade really needs another class so that we can all learn better. Hi, I'm Ollie. I'm in Miss 70's 3rd grade class at Michael Driscoll School. We have 25 students in my class. That is too many students for one teacher to have. I think this because when our teacher checks our work, there are so many students to check. Sometimes she doesn't have enough time to get to everyone, especially if kids need extra help. It is very hard to concentrate with that many kids in one room. It can be very distracting when you're trying to do your work. The room is very small too. Too small for this many people. Because of these reasons, I think we need one more 3rd grade class. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Max and Ollie. It takes a lot of courage to get up in front of a room full of people, so thank you for coming to speak with us. Okay, one more.
Hi, I'm Laura. I think that the 3rd grade class needs three classes because, for one, people don't get called on as much, and the teacher has to handle all the kids. And it's really hard if there are kids fooling around. And with all those kids, it can be extremely hard for the teacher and the kids that are learning. English might need a little more space, and same for the new kids. They might need more space. And that's why we think the 3rd grade needs 3 classes.
All right, thank you, Laura. All right, our next speaker is Hosna Abdurrahim.
Hosna can't speak, so we have another student. I was notified it will be Miriam Keshik.
Okay, we have another student whose name I don't have in front of me, so if you could introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, all, and thank you for allowing me to be here again. I appreciate the thought and discussion that went into decision to recognize Eid as a school holiday. I understand various concerns raised, but I'd like to share why this is still an important step worth considering. First, education isn't just about what happens in a classroom. It's about learning to respect and value the different cultures and beliefs that make up our school community. Recognizing Eid isn't just a day off, it's a powerful statement that all students are seen and valued. That kind of lesson is as important as math or science because it helps build the understanding and unity we need to thrive together. Second, canceling other holidays if the Eid holiday is made a Category 1 holiday feels like turning this into a problematic us versus them situation. But we're all a part of the same school system, and recognizing Eid isn't just about dividing us. It's about showing that we value everyone equally. While it's true that we can't have endless holidays, fairness means making room for diversity. If we can recognize holidays like Christmas, Thanksgiving, Yom Kippur, or other significant days, we can also find a way to honor Eid without sacrificing valuable learning time. Finally, I want to remind everyone that diversity is one of the school's greatest strengths. When we recognize each other's traditions, we're sending a message that everyone belongs here. That kind of inclusivity improves our school, not just for Muslim students, but for all of us. Thank you.
Would you mind introducing yourself to start with?
Hi, I'm Mariam Keshk, and I'm a freshman at Brookline High School. For as long as I've known, I've counted down the days until Ramadan, and when that arrived, I'd count down the days until Eid. When I wake up on Eid morning, I feel relieved and excited. It's a totally stress-free day. Getting together with my Muslim friends at the mosque early in the morning to pray, wearing my new clothes, going to festivals for hours, listening to Eid music in the car with my mom. It's the best day. The thing is, though, I'm in high school now, and my academics are a huge priority to me. But I shouldn't have to choose between my religion and my education. When I found out that we would be getting Eid off, I was really excited. Then I found out that those plans might change, and I was really disappointed. Eid is the one day of the year when I truly feel closest to all Muslims across the globe, all 2 billion of them. And I'd love to take the day and celebrate it with the people I love most and also share it with my non-Muslim friends. I hope you decide to stick to your decision to keep Eid as a Category 1 holiday. I know that the Brookline Muslim community will be very appreciative of your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. Our next speaker is Sadaf Kazmi.
Hi, everybody. I've been closely watching the ongoing discussion on the school calendar, and I have several concerns that I want to share with the school committee. First, when the community members requested that Eid be added as a Category 1 holiday, it was never our intention that our request would put all religious and cultural holidays on the table to be removed. These holidays are incredibly important to so many members of our community, and this would be a truly tragic outcome of this discussion. Second, the district has cited this idea of low attendance as criteria for Category 1, but based on the conversations in this room, this criterion has historically been applied either inconsistently or not at all. That is, of course, because this data simply doesn't exist. For existing holidays, we know that we just don't know how many people currently observe a holiday when schools are closed. But when a holiday is not a Category 1, many families, especially minorities, immigrants, or members of disfavored groups, unsurprisingly, do not feel comfortable missing school for religious observance or asserting their right to accommodation when it conflicts with the school day out of fear of discrimination. So in the case of Eid, to use this theoretically neutral criteria of low attendance, but to apply that only to this one holiday for this one particular group is at a very minimum in direct conflict with Brookline's own historical precedent and is therefore inequitable. Because of this, I ask that the school committee adhere to its original vote from October to add Eid al-Fitr to the 25-26 calendar as a Category 1 holiday. Going forward, I urge the school committee to adopt an updated standard for holidays that can be consistently applied and based on data. One approach is to adopt Category 1 holidays that A, are recognized by and advocated for by critical mass of our community, and B, in the case of religious holidays, to consider whether observance of those holidays conflicts with the school day. Brookline could also reassess the town's needs periodically to ensure that holidays are aligned with those needs. Other districts have addressed similar questions in different ways. Cambridge chooses to celebrate one holiday from each major world religion for a total of 3. Hopkinton and Lexington recently added Eid as an incremental day off. Wellesley, which has a much less diverse community, just ratified a plan that combines permanent and rotating holidays, including Eid, capping their holidays at 4. Incidentally, none of these districts use low attendance as a criterion, and Brookline's Muslim population is anecdotally similar or larger in size than these communities. I firmly believe that we can find a solution that honors the diversity of this community, establishes a criteria based on data, and consistently applies the same criteria to all holidays in the district. My final concern is that this conversation has at times felt incredibly divisive. A comment was made in a recent meeting that people are watching, and you're right. People are watching, our children are watching, my children are watching, and your children are watching. And I want to show them that we can solve problems and that there is space in this town for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cosme. And our next speaker is Dawn Feverly.
Hi, my name is Dawn. I get music with mine. My name is Dawn, and I have a daughter in kindergarten in the Brookline Public Schools. Growing up, I wasn't familiar at all with Eid. I was raised Christian, even attended a Catholic school. Though I had friends from different faith backgrounds, my community was mostly homogeneous. But when I met and fell in love with my future husband, a Jordanian Muslim, I discovered I had a lot to learn. He also introduced me to his amazing daughter from a previous marriage who also attends Brookline Public Schools and is Jewish. When we began having our own children, we decided to raise them as Muslims, but actively celebrate holidays from the Christian and Jewish traditions. My children decorate a Christmas tree, they hunt for Easter eggs. They recite the 10 plagues of Passover, they dip apples and challah into honey on Rosh Hashanah. They attend the mosque school on Sundays, and they celebrate the end of Ramadan with a large feast surrounded by their loved ones. Each of these holidays holds a special meaning in our inclusive family. So when the announcement came that Eid al-Fitr would be recognized as a Category 1 holiday in the Brookline Public Schools, we were elated. Through my own experiences of meeting people from different faiths, I've witnessed how recognizing others' beliefs fosters communication and understanding. In Brookline, I feel fortunate to live in a community that allows us to freely learn about and respect others' cultures and religions. Watching my daughter navigate these differences in a safe, open environment and discovering where she fits in has meant the world to me. So when I heard that Eid might be removed as a Category 1 holiday, I felt really saddened. I knew I would have to explain to her why one of the religions that she celebrates doesn't warrant the same recognition as the others. When she asks, and she will, how do I explain that to her? I understand that time off for multiple holidays can be a challenge for families, but I generally believe in our diverse community that representation matters. It fosters compassion, especially among our children, and lays the groundwork for tolerance and equity. When students feel included and safe in their school environment, they invite other peers into their social circles, deepening their understanding and connection to others. While some argue that there may not be enough students absent on this day to justify the holiday's Category 1 status, I wonder, how do we measure that? Were past decisions to add Category 1 holidays based on documented absences? Or was it based on how many families identified as a certain religion or cultural group? If so, how would our family, who holds several faiths dear, be categorized? How many, like us, live in this town? I don't seek to take away the holidays my stepdaughter or my Christian or Asian neighbors celebrate. I want to encourage my children to respect and honor those holidays and communities from which they arise. All I ask is that my children be afforded the same opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Feverly. And that concludes our first segment of public comment. We'll move on to our other business and get back to public comment, hopefully around 8:40 if we manage to stick to our schedule. All right, next up we have presentations and discussions of current issues. Our first presentation is from the Brookline High School Innovation Fund. It'll be a process overview about how the fund engages to drive ongoing innovative curriculum at BHS. I'm honored to turn this over to Head of School Anthony Meyer and Co-Chair Rob Lawrence of the Innovation Fund.
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Which would you prefer? Maybe I'd prefer this. Yeah. You're live. I'm live? Yeah, perfect. Perfect, great. All right. Awesome. I will do that, thank you. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to the school committee for allowing us to come in and share a little bit about the work we're doing at the fund. My name is Rob Lawrence. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Innovation Fund. I'm about to start my third year being involved in the fund. I have a junior at the high school. I also have a sixth grader at the Hayes School. And we also have another daughter that went through Hayes that is actually not in the district. So I guess just to start, maybe we could just move on to the agenda. We want to move along here and provide the information that you're looking for and answer any questions that you have. So just quickly, what we're going to cover tonight, what we do and how we do it is essentially and who we are. That's really the first topic of conversation. A little bit about how we source our ideas, how we evaluate them, and how we ultimately select courses to support in the high school. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how we permanently adopt courses, or how the district permanently adopts courses, because we typically will fund something for between 1 and 3 years. And I think a big question that the committee has is what happens to that course at the end of that funding period? What is the process for deciding whether or not it actually enters into the permanent course catalog or not? So we'll get into some of those details and also discuss a little bit about what the financial implications are for that. And then finally, we'll get to questions. So I would also say if you have a question, interrupt us. I'd like this to be a little bit interactive. That goes for, I guess, people in the audience as well. But I guess we can start by going to the next slide. So we are a parent-led nonprofit. We're a 501c3 within the high school, but we work independently of the high school. And our work is solely supported by private constituents, private funding. So we raise money from parents, alumni, local businesses, members of the community. We have a couple of large fundraising events every year. We just recently had our annual gala. I think we had a couple school committees we certainly invited, and I think we had a couple in attendance. I remember seeing Hal there that night. And it was a great evening. It was held in the STEM building. Every year we have a tradition of celebrating a teacher or a teaching team for excellence in innovation. And so this year we honored the freshman physics team that approached the fund about 5 years ago with a proposal to reimagine ninth grade physics, turn it into a more applied course, a more sort of experiential learning course, and actually to make physics fun for freshmen. It was a great celebration of the work that they've done, and we're now at a situation where every freshman class in the high school has now taken the new physics course, and we have now been indoctrinated into this kind of freshman year adaptive physics program, and it's been a wild success. So just an example of some of the things we do, and so that's how we raise money through fundraising and whatnot. How we actually fund courses mechanically, we provide grants to teachers to develop and teach new courses and or initiatives that tend to be interdisciplinary, tend to be forward thinking. And we're soliciting these ideas solely from high school teachers and administrators. These are not parents coming to the table with an agenda with money that they want to say, I want my kid to go get AP English support, so we need a course to go do that. We are soliciting ideas from teachers and the district. It's teacher generated. We evaluate these. We have a program committee. We'll get into the governance of the fund in a minute. We have a program committee that consists of both parent volunteers as well as a couple of folks from the district. So Anthony Meyer, our head of school, sits on the program committee. We have a program liaison. I'll explain a little bit more what that is in a minute, but our program liaison is also a PSB teacher. She's a high school Spanish teacher. Her name is Erica O'Mahony. And then we also have on the program committee, Gabe McCormick, who is, I believe, our senior director of teaching and learning for the district. So it's a combination of volunteer parents who have been involved in the fund for a number of years, as well as district professionals, going through a robust set of evaluation criteria to decide, is this innovative enough? Is it a fit? Can the funds support it? Do we have the budget to support it? And is it something that is really relevant in the district? Things that were what's relevant in today's education. The way mechanically we do it, if you think about offering grant funding, we're essentially reimbursing the district for a fraction of a teacher's time. So if you're a history teacher and you teach 5 courses and you are a part of a team that is proposing to teach a new course, we would fund a 0.2 release for that teacher to go teach that course, and we effectively reimburse the district in those funds. And we're effectively writing a check to the district twice a year to reimburse them for those funds. Next slide, please. So a couple things. So I should say we typically fund between one, maybe 2. In an extreme year, we might fund 3 things. It all depends on how much resource each of these courses is required or programs. Other things we might only fund for a year if it's not a course, if it's like a teaching fellow or something like that that's spanning multiple years or multiple courses. But so if you think about on an annual basis, the course catalog at Brookline High School is roughly 300 courses, give or take. We're funding between 1 to 3 different courses a year. It's just a little bit of innovation on the margin. So not a huge impact on an annual basis. But when you look at it in the aggregate over the last 25 years that we've been working with the fund, with the district, we've raised some towards upwards of $7 million that we've pumped into the high school with new coursework and new ideas, and roughly 25 courses that started as ideas through the Innovation Fund are now a part of the permanent course syllabus at the high school. So pretty small impact on an annual basis, but when you think about the aggregate impact, almost 10% of the courses in the course catalog came out of work and on funding that the Innovation Fund provided. Not at all.
Jesse, it looks like you had a question.
Yeah, so you're saying that the curricula developed for these courses becomes part of the permanent teacher base?
In most cases, yes. So the courses, we choose to have them live on. In some cases, no. It may be innovation that Brookline Lens is an example. It was a really unique interdisciplinary course that happened during COVID, and it really didn't take off with student interest. So after the years of the fund funding, we decided not to move. Yeah, we pulled it. So I just wanted to speak to, you see that, as Rob said, over the last 25 years, an incredible number of high quality courses that people recognize as key parts of our Brookline High offering. Some of those are programs, so you see African American and Latino scholars. There's also a Teachers Mentoring Teachers program that began when the Innovation Fund began and was led by legendary BHS teachers Margaret Metzger and Gail Davis, supporting new teachers as they acculturate to the high school. You see interdisciplinary courses like climate science and social change. Anyway, lots of terrific work by the Innovation Fund, and not all of the ideas fly in the end, or over time they sort of, we might have student interest lessen and so make decisions about what to run each year given student needs, graduation requirements, and course requests.
Yeah, I have a question. I might have missed this earlier, but is the 0.2 release that you fund always for actually teaching the course, or can it also be for collab time to plan a course, for example?
Good question. It has come in both forms. So for example, the physics team, I believe, had 6.2 releases over 3 years. So 2 teachers in year 1, 3 teachers in year 1, and then 2, then 1, I think. And those were pure course releases, because what they were doing is taking the really good work, that the lesson plans that they had co-drafted, soliciting feedback from the team, making changes, republishing. And so that was really incredible teacher leadership of that physics change. But sometimes we have folks jump right into a course without that planning time provided by the fund.
Okay. So just really quickly on fund governance, I am one of two co-chairs, as I mentioned at the outset. The other co-chair is, his name is Ben Stern. Ben has 3 sons, all in Brookline schools. One has already graduated from the high school, another is a junior at the high school, and also as a 6th grader, I believe, at Lawrence. I'll call your attention to 2 boxes up there. There's the blue box on the left-hand side of the chart, which is which says it's our administrative director. Her name is Stacy Zelbo. That is a paid position, so part of the money that we raise each year goes to fund that role. It's about a 0.6 FTE role that we just pay directly. It has nothing to do with the district. The other role that we fund that is not in the classroom, as I mentioned earlier, is the program liaison, which is the far right box on this chart, and that is Erica O'Mahony. Just to talk a little bit about what the fund liaison does. So, starting in September, we are out. Yeah, let's go to the next slide because we can come back to governance, but. I think talking about like the sourcing and selection process, I think is important. I'm going to get a little closer because I can't see.
Yeah,
I can't see.
hard to read it.
So the program liaison, Erica, she I'll just tell you what she did this September because it's just easier to describe exactly what she did. She set up meetings and went to every departmental meeting over the first couple weeks of the school year, and basically pitched the teachers and the department chairs on the Innovation Fund and what we do, and this concept of a quick pitch. We are out soliciting ideas for new innovative courses that maybe you've been thinking about for a little while. I think most teachers know what the Innovation Fund is. In fact, a lot of teachers that come to Brookline come here because there's an Innovation Fund in place. So Erica works with these teachers to help kind of firm up the ideas. She'll give immediate feedback. Well, I think that's a pretty good idea, but you might want to think about this. We then go through this quick pitch process where it's basically, we don't want anyone to do too much work before they get a yes or a no into like sort of like a stage gate process. So we ask them to create a quick pitch, which is basically like a 1-pager. What's the theory of the case? What's the idea? And then the program committee will engage and review all those quick pitches, provide feedback back to all of those teams. You might want to think about this. Erica may actually do like a little bit of, I'm not sure this is going to fly, but if you want to keep working on this, because we're evaluating each of these along a set of criteria. Again, does it fit? Is it innovative? Is it forward thinking? Is it something that is really core to what that we're excited about as an innovation fund, and can we fund it? All of those criteria go into deciding whether we're going to move these quick pitches into the next step, which would then turn into, this year we had 11 quick pitches, for example. Those 11 quick pitches are going to turn into 4 full proposals. That's where, again, the program liaison will work with those select teams that are going to move forward into creating a full proposal, which is a much more robust, set of requirements. It's a larger ask. We want details on funding, what people are going to be doing, the activities, understanding some of the lesson plans, just getting into more of the depth of like the content. And then there's a series of back and forth. There's some feedback given. They come in, they'll do like an initial pitch, they'll get feedback. We'll then have one final sort of presentation in the January. That's coming up right after the new year, where we will hear the final pitches from, I think we have 4 that are going in front of us. The program committee will evaluate all of those. We'll spend 4 or 5 hours evaluating the merits of all 4 of those, and we will decide which ones, preliminarily, we will decide which ones we think we want to fund. And then in our February board meeting, we will come to our board meeting as a program committee and make a recommendation to the entire board as to which programs we would propose the fund supports for the next academic year. So that's in February. Our budgeting cycle really starts. We're on the same fiscal year as the district. We don't really know, because we have a couple spring fundraisers. We don't know what our budget is going to be until about April, and so we can't actually confirm with our teams which programs we're going to fund. until that April timeframe, when we just have a little bit more clarity on, you know, the final tally on the amount of money we're going to raise over the course of the academic year to be able to fund programs the next year. So in the roughly the April timeframe, we will, so teachers don't know whether or not their course has been selected for funding in the next year until April, when we tell them. And then we tend to send a letter out to the district in the May-June timeframe with basically announcing these grants and the dollars that we're going to put towards supporting these programs. And so that's largely the process. You know, again, this is the program. We have pretty robust. Like it's too much detail to get into the evaluation criteria in here, but we have educators around the table that have worked with us on this criteria. It's a robust evaluation, and we do spend a lot of time evaluating the pros and cons of each of these programs, because we're not going to be able to support all of these great ideas in a given year. Oh, I didn't even see
that just happened. Carolyn, go ahead.
If you're making the selections in April, are those for classes that then kick off the following September, or the course is then developed through?
Both sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just curious. Yeah. Do the teachers just cram? And then also, how do students know if course selection has already happened?
Good questions. The second one is probably easier. We will list courses saying pending approval. So you'll see like a little innovation fund logo, and it's both pending approval and pending interest. And so we put everything and the kitchen sink in our course catalog, and we love to do it, as many courses as we can, but then determine what resources we have available, A, from the Innovation Fund, and B, more importantly, from the district, given our financial picture. In terms of our teachers, are they planning to launch a course? In many cases, yes. And there sometimes can be support from the Innovation Fund around summer money, workshop money. I might try to work with the Office of Teaching and Learning also to find workshop money in order to help them be ready to launch a course. Good questions. I think we might move towards, yeah, I think a big question and concern for the district, I think, and rightly so, is what are the financial implications of Innovation Fund funding, and what happens when that funding ends? And so I want to give a couple concrete examples. There are bullets there. Several years ago, maybe 4 years ago, Roger Grandy, a longtime social studies teacher, and Brianna Brown, Dr. Brianna Brown, now our interim science chair, but then a biology and environmental science teacher, launched the course Climate Science and Social Change. And they worked on that course together for 3 years. And teachers in the room know that that third year tends to be the magical year when things come together. Years 1 and 2, you're pulling it together, you're improving, you're iterating. And as Roger and Brianna were preparing for that third year, they were engaged in discussions supported by their chairs and ultimately by me in thinking about what is this going to look like if it lives on. And we knew it wouldn't be, I mean, the fund very generously supported a course of 25 to 30 students at 0.4 FTE, 2 teachers in a single course, in a single block. That's incredibly generous. That's not something in most cases, unless it's an explicit co-teaching arrangement, that we're really able to fund. And so they made the decision that Roger would live on with the course, and it happened to be that Brianna eventually landed that interim science chair. So the course lives on at 0.2 FTE, and to put it kind of, I don't know, generally, it competes with other senior offerings in science and social studies, and depending on interest, we determine whether to run a section or not. A more complicated example where I think it will be more challenging is some of the FTE in the queer student program is devoted to an not an administrator, but a coordinator, I'm not even using the right word, but a release to provide leadership to the program. A question for us will certainly be, can we continue to fund that when the innovation funding goes away? And that will be a serious discussion with the Office of Teaching and Learning, with Linus and his team, Dr. Guillory and his team, to determine whether that point two, whether we have that given all of our other needs. So those are a couple of examples of where courses can live on or program components might live on or not. And those are decisions that we make in the context of what we call sectioning. And that's essentially where the budget comes very alive at the high school, and we're determining how much FTE do we have, who are who are those staff members, what can they teach, and how are we going to staff the high school. So I want to make sure, I want to see if there are other.
Yep, Helen's hand is up.
Okay, great, perfect.
Well, thank you guys for this presentation. It was great. I mean, I remember I was at the founding of the Innovation Fund when it first began. And I think one of the difficult pieces is, how do you continue a course when there are 2 teachers and 25 students? We can't afford that. And I think you've very clearly put forward what you ended up having to do. That's not to say we shouldn't be innovative and shouldn't find ways to make it happen. My question was just, I don't know about reimagining the restaurant, and I'm wondering how that, what that's about, and what the support is now for that.
Sure, that's a great question, Helen. So if people who remember the high school from before, we had a long-standing restaurant program. I believe it was Restaurant 108. It was named because it was in classroom 108, and it is exactly what you would imagine, a sort of dark, somewhat dingy, but clean enough to serve food classroom. And as we imagined the renovation and expansion, we very much wanted to support the restaurant program. It supports all types of kids at Brookline High School, and more importantly, pulls them together in a work environment where they're laboring together and learning together. And so as we imagined the renovation, we were thinking it would be really great to support a new location for the restaurant that is prime real estate, and really signals how important this program and the students in it are to our school community. And so the Innovation Fund agreed to provide funding for an additional teacher for a period of time. I want to say we did just 2 years of funding in that case. And we did so knowing the whole time that we were going to need to make up a gap as the restaurant rolled off the fund, that we were going to need to find an additional 0.4 FTE in order to support the restaurant having 2 teachers long term. So we had some support and financial relief for a period of time during that innovation. And as it was going to return to the district budget, we began sectioning with one premise, among others, that was we need to find 0.4 FTE in order to continue to float the restaurant. So that's, Helen, that's the example of the restaurant, and that happened right around, well, during the renovation, and I think the funding ended a year ago. Not this school year, but last school year.
Thank you. And actually, it's very visible, the restaurant, and the work that goes on in there. If you walk in, you can see the students working in the kitchen. It's really wonderful.
That's great. Thanks, Helen. Stephen, I see maybe a question.
That's all right. Go ahead. I also see Mariah's hand up. So Stephen, then Mariah.
I think Mariah.
Mariah, yeah, maybe your hand was up first. I couldn't tell. So go ahead, Mariah.
Thanks. I wonder, given the challenges that we're just sort of talking about programs, if there's some way to, given that there's things that Innovation Funds does, they're all amazing, and they're all this wonderful collaboration with staff. And some of them are really easy to onboard, like the courses, and some of them are really hard to onboard, like the programs. When we're having to, I mean, I think people think it sounds really small, but like was it last year, Anthony, or the year before, where we had a couple of them come to their conclusion at the same time, and it ended up equaling like a 0.6 or a 0.8 or whatever it was. And it is impactful on the overall balance of FTE and what we can offer, especially when we think about, it's 1 year it's 0.2, the next year it's 0.4, and then it's go back to 0.2. They add up as a cumulative program over a long time. And it's amazing that this program has that history, but it does have this impact. And so I guess what I'm wondering is there a way to either focus the innovation fund further on the curriculum innovation, or somehow um, plan for the programs in some way that makes sure that they're not going to accumulate or stack up in 1 year, or maybe that there's fewer of them so that we can have a slower impact of those programs on the overall FTE at the high school?
Yes, in short, I think that that's an ongoing challenge that we need to continue to address. I'm blanking for a moment. I have an example. Let's see, why am I just need to refresh my memory because, Mariah, as you were asking your question, I was thinking about an example. So just give me 1 minute, not a full minute, 30 seconds. Yeah, really, very much so.
If I could help out, maybe?
Yeah, please.
A little. I think if the class is run with one teacher and 25 students, the budget implication is those 25 students aren't in another class. The question becomes when it's more than one teacher, I think. For the
But
most part.
but Helen, those are temporary during the innovation fund period. The double teaching
No,
doesn't
yeah,
continue
that's-
past the period of funding. So that's not
Right.
what I'm asking about. It's really like I'll give an example. There's some of the affinity programs that have started more recently. So like the AAPI affinity group, Career Student Program, and these are important aspects of ensuring inclusion in our community, ensuring welcoming and belonging, and those are
Mhm.
great. And it leads to a challenge when a couple of them stack up in 1 year, right? And so how do we make sure, and like the example Anthony just gave, I think a couple years ago it was maybe AAPI plus the restaurant both onboarding in 1 year that turned into a 0.2 plus a 0.4, so it was a 0.6.
Mhm.
And that was the fall where we had large class sizes. Not that
Right.
that 0.6 was, the reason, the thing to point the finger at, but it's one contributing factor. And so I guess my question is, how do we make sure that those things don't pile up?
Yeah.
And that we
No,
really
you're right.
emphasize the course innovation, which is budget neutral.
Great, Mariah, and thank you. Sorry, everyone, for my senior moment. I think the example that I wanted to cite was last year, we had a social studies teacher, Mark Wheeler, come and pitch a course, and it was public memory, and he wanted to run it as a senior course. And we found that intriguing. And in the end, where we steered him through the very process Rob described of the back and forth between the quick pitch, the program committee, and most of all, the educator and his chair, we launched it instead as an innovation fellow funded for a single year with the idea of creating curriculum that can be used at the junior level to satisfy our district's civics requirement, and also provide really engaging curriculum that every junior, so Rob's example is the best one of the work that I've been a part of with the Innovation Fund. And I'm not speaking to the quality of the program, but the size of the impact of experiential physics. That's golden, where it's not additional FTE after the Innovation Fund funding ends. It's every kid is impacted through 9th grade physics and this newly bolstered curriculum. So I think throughout my tenure, we've tried to balance the dangers of the additive quality of the Innovation Fund with widening impact, and how do we look at programs and courses that can impact more and more students. So Mariah, I do think it's an important part of that work, not only within the program committee, but work that Gabe in his present role and I are doing with Dr. Guillory, with Dr. Fortuna, and saying, scanning for what are in the future are going to be potential budgetary impacts, and how do we navigate those?
Can I just add one more thing, Andy, on that, which is I think that it's really important too that as these programs in their year one or whatever that we're adopting them, that we at least also have that visibility into that future potential impact, because that way we're avoiding surprises and everyone's on the same page. So we don't end up at the third year, you want to add them and there's some sort of surprise and hesitation. This really just makes sure that everyone's on the same page early so that there's all the pieces are in place to make sure that whether it needs to be something that we consider in just the multi-year budget process, whether it's through override considerations or other, that we're just all sort of like counting those in and on board with that early on.
That sounds great. Thank you, Mariah.
Stephen?
Thanks. And thanks for this overview and this presentation. Another sustainability-oriented question. Now that we have a district strategic plan, has there been any consideration given to requesting that or giving priority to proposals that look to align with the strategic plan so that a sustainability pathway for that course could be more easily borne by the district, since it would already be in the works essentially for PSB to adopt coursework in that area?
That's a great question, and just to be candid, no is the short answer, and I think that we can do a better job, especially given that we have both a district leader and a high school leader sitting on the program committee. I think that feedback, which is important, can be part of our outreach early on in the sourcing of things to say, how is this related to the district's strategic plan in addition to key high school goals?
Yeah.
I think that's a great piece of feedback. We will incorporate that into how we're thinking. The new strategic plan was not on our radar, but it's something we should certainly be considering as we're evaluating.
Yeah, I would never want to suggest that it should be a required category for all submissions, because I think one of the great things about the fund is that it sources grassroots-based ideas, and it doesn't require that top-down vision-based thinking to source the innovation. But I think maybe a category for some, because it just seems like it's a ready-made sustainability pathway for some of the coursework that's emerging from this. Anyway, thanks.
Thanks. It's a very good feedback.
Jesse?
Yeah, I have a question. It seems, and I remember a conversation I had with Bob Weintraub about this, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, who was involved in starting it. And it seems like this is a wonderful, valve for allowing expressions of desire to improve something in the curriculum and in the offerings to occur. My question is, what other pathways does the district take to improve curricula that, I don't know, my question is how much higher does this get you beyond a course, say coding, for example, I saw it on there. Coding is sort of a ever-evolving, AI is another one, ever-evolving even faster than coding. It codes for you now, so,
we don't have to know how to code anymore.
Exactly. So the question is, let's just say, for example, that we get a really strong new science-related or computer science-related faculty member who already sort of is aware of many things that he or she could teach that are not currently part of the curriculum. So the district sort of miraculously ends up with a person on staff who's very strong in that newish area, right? They'll come in and teach that, right? But you give them the flexibility to do that. That doesn't cost you anything, right? Because they're not going to pitch anything. They come in pitched already. I mean, they've got the background. So is there that other avenue? Does that occur on sort of I guess more for Anthony, over the space of say 3 to 4 to 5 years, is there that ebb of new hires or someone that on their own took a course over summers or whatever and has some area that they like? They're not asking for the funding, but that continuously sort of improves the curricular offerings?
It's a great question and point. And I would say, yes, we have that. And I think it somewhat depends what are graduation requirements and sort of what are core pieces of work that need to happen within a department. But I would say our department chairs, working with the support of Gabe and Jody in particular, do an amazing job of saying, what is it that we're teaching? What ought we to be teaching? And, what do kids need and what are we good at? And so, not to get into too many details, but our former science chair, Ed Weiser, is now teaching a really interesting combination of courses, medical careers and woodworking, and we have an opportunity to launch a new course related to him that would be FTE neutral, that takes advantage of some of his incredible knowledge and skills, and frankly meets a really important need in the high school in a population we don't necessarily serve well in terms of post-secondary options. So I think in some way, like, the Innovation Fund is a guaranteed partner for 25 years in supporting the Brookline schools. And our ongoing commitment is to say, are we recruiting and retaining the best teachers? Are we putting them in positions to be successful? And I think that our chairs do an amazing job of noticing those talents and making those shifts. A business teacher who has another cert, and maybe that's another needs of Brits. And you'll hear a little more flexibility in that in our electives, or our so-called electives, because there are fewer graduation requirements. Thank you.
Suzanne, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. There are more comments than questions that I have. Just two big ones. There's so many pluses to this, but two that I really want to draw out as one is retention for teachers. I just think it's so critical that our teachers have opportunities to try new things. Right about 15, 18 years of teaching, you start to say, can I do this for another 20 years? And if you have the opportunity to create, to rethink things, to be innovative, I think it helps them to keep going and gives them new life. So that's one. And then the other thing I wanted to comment on, it helps keep us fresh, right? Like, new ideas are coming all the time. What will AI look like in the classroom, in a course, in another 5 years, maybe 2 years, I don't know. But this idea that you offer the opportunity for all of us to stay fresh and to stay on top of what's going on. And I'm thinking too of pathways that, we're starting to talk, not here necessarily, but other places, but maybe hear a little bit about pathways in the high school. And I could see this as an opportunity to explore some of that. So I just want to thank you for the Innovation Fund. And
thank you for the time. And you would not be shocked to know that more than 2 of the 11 quick pitches we had to do with AI, and I'm pretty sure at least 1 or 2 of the final 4 pitches are AI related. So keep an eye out for it.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes left here, and there's a question from the floor. So would you like to go ahead? Yeah. Oh, I didn't think. Okay.
Ready. So if you view the curricula as sort of like a distributed effort over the entire time that the student is spending in the classroom, then it seems to me that there is like a natural, like a budget-friendly, from your point of view, way of basically trying to optimize what the students are learning and getting the maximum bang for your buck in terms of what, if I'm teaching something, let's say in math, like linear equations or something, like, what is the student getting out of being taught this? What can they actually do with it? And then thinking about, well, there's a lot of different concepts that, the student is learning in this particular class. Okay, can I, in collaboration with, teachers, or by strategically thinking about this particular class, let's say it's math, can I come up with, better ideas that give more bang for the buck? Like, and I can give you an example that.
Actually, if you want to wrap up your question, we do need to move on. So
okay.
Yeah.
So basically, my point is, instead of trying to create a whole new course, you can just focus on a small portion of a course that already exists, like a math course or a physics course, And you say, not all of the ideas being taught in this core course are essential. In essence, I can strategically think about better ideas that will give more bang for the buck. And it's still a physics class. It's still a math class. It's just, this idea is arcane. It's not useful.
Could you please wrap it up?
Yeah.
Is there a question?
That's it.
Okay.
That's basically the...
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think that's a really important point, and some of what that we have done with the Innovation Fund and in other areas, it's not create a whole new course, but rather this piece needs tweaking, or this piece needs to be an addition. Maybe we need to pull out this older piece. And what I like about that is not only it refreshes the curriculum, but it also is cost neutral, which I think is important. So I want to wrap up. We do have our vice chair here also, Mona Moafi, who we didn't recognize. So she's here as well. And as Rob said, Ben Stern isn't with us tonight. So
And Carolyn actually has one last.
Sorry,
which I didn't
I'll
see
just
before.
wrap up with a quick, because I always have to do this sloppy blah, blah. BHS is an amazing institution. It is the jewel of our town. Whatever criticisms we may occasionally have about one thing or another. And this is really indicative of what we are so lucky to have here. It's a large school. There's something for everyone. And when you have kids in the school, you really feel that, and they feel it, and they see that there's this world out there of ideas and learning. And so thank you for this. Thanks for the time. Go BHS.
thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Carolyn. I haven't heard the criticisms about BHS, so that's dramatic. Verbal irony. No, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. All right, this takes us to our second discussion of a current issue, which is the draft 25-26 school district calendars, including the possible addition of Eid al-Fitr as a new Category 1 holiday, or the possible removal of all Category 1 holidays from the calendar. So I want to note that there's no vote scheduled for tonight, so that's not on the agenda. What we do have is a discussion, so a chance for members to give their thoughts and ask questions. Associate Town Council Susan Harris will be able to come down in a few minutes to join us. She's upstairs at the advisory committee meeting at the moment. So if people have any questions about legal aspects of anything they might be considering, this would be the time to ask. Just to start things, I wanted to read a couple of, I think, key sentences from the memo that we received from Town Council. So these are things that we should all be keeping in mind. So one is, in considering adding or removing school holidays now and moving forward, the school committee should rely on criteria tied to the learning needs of PSB students that are, one, supported by evidence, and two, non-discriminatory. And the other sentence I'd like to point out is low attendance is not the only possible evidence that may support school closure based on the particular learning needs of a community's students. To the extent that designating Eid al-Fitr as a Category 1 holiday is a deviation from the school committee's past practice, however, the school committee should think through and preferably articulate the substantial evidence underlying its decision on the record. Okay? So that's the written guidance we've received, and both of these sentences, the application may not be clear in particular cases, so this would be the chance to ask once Susan Harris can join us. So anyone have any comments that they want to start off with? Yep, I see Val's hand up.
I was waiting for Susan, actually,
Yep. If we can either just hold until Susan comes, or if people want to comment.
I might have a couple comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Don't require Susan, thanks.
Mhm.
So just in terms of, we've gotten lots of different emails about this. Some sort of, and this is kind of just housekeeping clarification. We had another discussion about this that was a little confusing maybe. And then we have some people saying, don't reverse your vote, but we also have a letter from Town Council saying, we didn't actually vote. So not necessarily asking you to clarify, but just pointing that out, I guess, that,
Sure, my understanding is the vote we did take was to ask the superintendent to come back to us with a revised calendar. It was not a final vote to
Right.
adopt a calendar or to add a holiday.
Oh, and I also wanted to say, responding to a few things that I think we heard, that the idea of having a, I'll call it sort of a clean slate academic calendar where we only have federal and state holidays as no school days is not a response to this current discussion about adding a new holiday. That's been on the table at least since August, when we discussed it as a group. And I think it's in the sort of in the chatosphere anyway, because of just community concerns about inconsistency in the schedule and what that means for continuity of teaching and learning. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there for us too.
All right, thanks, Carolyn. Val, did you want to, oh, I guess you wanted to wait for,
I mean, I can start and I guess,
Okay.
ask it again when Susan's here. I
Yep.
attempted to ask her earlier in the day and then got called back because the judge was making a ruling. In any event, so my thought after reflecting on this isn't really in any of the calendars in front of us, which I think is okay. Actually, one of the speakers at public comment mentioned the Wellesley option, and from my perspective, it seems like one we should consider. It would take a little bit of work for us to get there. They did a survey of their staff, not of their families, but of their staff, to see which holidays staff would be unavailable to teach on, either because they observe the holiday, but I think also largely because the school district where their kids went to school didn't have school that day. So they landed on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Good Friday because, well, I don't know the breakdown, but because they either were celebrating those holidays or because the district where their kids went to school or had childcare had those days off. And then they rotated. I might get the holidays wrong, but my understanding is they rotate a fourth holiday and they landed on 4 as the maximum for a 5 or 10 year period without review. And I believe it's Lunar New Year, Eid, Diwali, and maybe one additional that
That was
they
it. That was it, just those three.
just those 3 that they rotate every 3rd year. And then if something falls on a weekend, they go to the next one that year and then and sort of rotate that way. Which seemed to me to address needs of the community in both the ability to celebrate diversity in the community, but also to have an understanding of when it would just be too challenging to have school because you wouldn't have enough staff to teach students regardless of how many students there were.
So am I understanding right that for the 3 permanent holidays, the rationale there was not day of low attendance, but day of low staff availability? And then for the rotating one, the rationale was just the desire to recognize certain communities who live in the district?
It was recognizing, right, the diversity of the community with rotating and also establishing that there'd be no more than 4. So the 4 was a fixed, which I think you can have a sort of rational basis for why 4 is fixed, and that they wouldn't sort of add on an ad hoc basis. They would reassess. I forget if it was every 5 or 10 years, but they'd reassess every 5 or 10 years with the community. So that, they weren't having to redo this every winter or every other winter. They put it on a schedule to reassess and just reevaluate to make sure that both the standing and the rotating holidays still made sense in their community.
Okay, thanks. I see Mariah and then Helen.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, and also Susan is here, so you can, any questions, she's now available. Thank you for joining us. And
This is maybe a question for Val, but I'm not sure. In the scenario you're mentioning though, essentially that says communities have these holidays off, and so therefore it's like a catch-22. No one can ever change because these holidays are already enshrined in Brookline or other districts. And so am I understanding it right? It's essentially, Val, is that the way you would interpret it? Like other places have it off, and so therefore we cannot make any decision independent of that?
That's not how I would, that's not how I would describe it. I would describe it that that particular educator or staff member just has either their own religious affiliation that day, or they, or yes, the school district or the, you know, the childcare center where their child attends is not changed. So, you know, in that regard, I guess, Mariah, it would have to be like some wholesale change in the state as opposed to a sort of regional look at this. But I think that's why places like Wellesley are looking at it on like a sort of like a census interval, right, to see where things are every 10 years.
I'm sorry, I thought you were, Mariah, I thought Val was saying that those 3 holidays, you were proposing them as permanent, not because they were historically permanent here, but because of potential staff availability. I thought
Correct.
that was your
Yes.
proposed
Right,
rationale.
That is my proposed rationale.
but the point is that that places are closed, therefore we can't consider them because places are closed. But if everyone then stays in places are closed, imagine Wellesley is polling their teachers in 5 years, and some of them live in Brookline, and they say, well, Brookline's closed. Well, then we're just in this sort of standoff where no one is able to make decisions because they're only being driven by other places opening and closing decisions. Like it seems like a recipe for not making change if that's what the district wants to do.
okay, Helen, and then Carolyn. And Val, did you also, you think you said you had a question for Susan when she did arrive?
The
So,
question was just if that rationale satisfies the memo, Susan.
Is this working? Okay, great. Thank you. So I came in a little bit in the middle, Val, so I'm sorry about that, but I think you were talking about a rationale based on staff availability, kind of on one hand, and then the interplay with a goal to celebrate diversity on the other hand.
Yeah, I was essentially floating a similar model to what Wellesley just adopted. So the 3 fixed holidays that they based on the staff availability, and then a 4th, and they kept it at 4, where that 4th holiday was rotating for various holidays where they wouldn't have an issue with staff availability and or students in large numbers perhaps being absent, but that it was in a celebration of diversity of their community.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to answer kind of on a hypothetical basis for Brookline, because I think part of what went into Wellesley's decision making, with however they ultimately ended at their decision, involved surveys and community input. I believe they had a task force. So certainly I think every community is going to want to take a look at what makes sense in that community and base it on the data and input from that community. But on its face, something like staff availability and something like the input from the community about what's important to them could seem to satisfy a non-discriminatory basis and have some evidentiary rationale to it.
Thank you.
Helen, go ahead, and then Carolyn.
So I really think we need to come to a decision. And I think we need to I would suggest, for me, I would like us to keep what we have, include Eid, one holiday of Eid for next year, because parents need to know what's happening next year. It's already almost January and we still don't have the calendar out there. And so it's just, I think we're going to go back and forth and try and figure out all sorts of machinations. I remember at one point, what can you hear me?
You're breaking up a little bit.
I'm sorry. At one point, when I first came on school committee, I thought, well, why don't we just have one vacation in March as opposed to a February and an April one, so we get better learning. And it's impossible when you look at the other districts and our teachers who live in other districts, same as what you're talking about now. So we're talking about one day more in the year, this year, after Juneteenth. Next year, it'll be totally different because of the way the holidays fall, because of the way everything else falls. I think that we need to move forward. And I, for one, would like to do it with what we have and include aid.
Carolyn and Suzanne.
Thanks. So a few things. So I was listening to Val and interested in what you knew, Val, about how Wellesley came to their decision. I printed out their calendar because it was mentioned a few times. So just so people know, at this point, Wellesley is teachers showing up August 21st. If all goes well, last day of school, June 18th, potentially June 26th, 27th. So we end up with stretching out the school year, which I think kind of comes back to, we're talking a lot here about diversity and inclusion and religion. And we have a fabulously diverse town, and there are many ways that our school district can and does recognize, celebrate diversity and culture. But legally, a public school district can't celebrate a religious holiday. That's why it has to be neutral. It has to be secular. Our rationale has to be secular and based on some amount of data that I'm not sure, community feedback, I don't really know what that means. And I think we want to keep in our decision-making here should be driven by our purpose as a school district. This is what Dr. Guillory said in our conversation in August. And our purpose is to provide 180 days of effective instruction, ideally with continuity for our staff, for our students receiving services, especially perhaps. So I think that should be our driver. I think surveying staff is probably important, and we maybe need that information. We really need data, and we talked about that, I think, at the last meeting. I've made some data requests. I've had a couple conversations with building leaders about what our actual days of low attendance are and what makes sense for our buildings for delivering instruction. One of the building leaders said to me, we know because teachers tell us that we have a window within which effective instruction can occur, and it ends in June. So I just think whatever we do, it needs to be driven by our purpose as a school district in terms of education. And we did have feedback from building leaders that Dr. Guillory read some of to us in August, and I would like that to be distributed to the school committee. And if we're considering other options, including having only state and federal holidays, I would love to get the building leaders' feedback on that. And I think the reason to, if people are concerned about fairness and status of one culture or religion versus another, the fairest way to do this is the tidy legal way, which is we have regulations that say we have to provide 180 days of school. We have accommodations that we have to provide, and we do. Anybody who wants to be absent to celebrate religion can be absent, and we have to accommodate them with an excused absence and homework accommodation. And if we're concerned about fairness, that's the fairest way. Everybody gets the same thing. So those are the things that I'm thinking about, and being really careful about what we do legally. I don't think that this is a school district that should be pushing the boundaries at this point in terms of making ourselves vulnerable to legal challenges. So those are a few things I'm thinking about.
All right, Suzanne and then Mariah.
Yeah, I want us to go back again to our August discussions and our October discussions, and we did vote, I believe it was 7-1, 6-1, to have the superintendent put Eid as a Category 1 holiday on the calendar for us to vote. And I think we were deliberate in that conversation. And I think that for next year, we said for 1 year, because we know that this is a really challenging and difficult decision, and it will have impact for a number of years. And so I still go back to that October vote, and I would vote that way again if we voted tonight, which we're not, but we will in January. And I think that we need more time to talk about what we're going to do about our Category 1, Category 2, Category 3 holidays. It's involved with homework and testing and assessments. It's quite complicated. And I don't know how we'll fall on that. I think we need lots of input from administrators, teachers, staff. We are getting a lot of input from the community. So it's good to hear from people. I'm sure we will continue to hear from people, but I think that's important. This is an important decision. I don't think that we are trying to isolate, or I think we're trying to be fair to everybody. And we do that by recognizing what is important to our various groups and our diversity here. I will say that we're not being a leader. Other places have been a leader in this before us, so we're not out front. Other places have Eid as a holiday, Category 1, so it's not like we're going out there all by ourselves. Other people have already done that, and it's been accepted. I will say that I'm not worried about 1 day extra in June as learning. I will tell you that there is good learning that goes on in June. It may not look like what you see in March, but it's actually more fun. So by the time June comes around, testing, assessments are done, and people can do fun projects, do presentations, they do field trips. June is a good month for learning, and so I'm not worried about that. So, those are the things I'm saying, that's what I believe, and I am sticking with my vote when it comes up to do Eid for next year, and then to do a longer conversation and a deeper dive into future years. Thanks.
Okay, Mariah's hand is up.
I agree with Suzanne.
All right. Stephen.
I just want to make a couple of comments. So first of all, I just want to thank Susan for the memo. That was really helpful to help us think through what are the legal requirements for the rationale for declaring a Category 1 holiday. I just want to make 3 points. One is that I think the calendar as it is right now, there is a discriminatory status quo. I don't think that we've effectively used a day of low attendance to determine Category 1 holidays as it stands right now. Certainly by not revisiting our Category 1 holidays, we've effectively let them, we've grandfathered them in to the point that we just don't know any data behind whether these days would indeed be days of low attendance. And certainly when we looked at Lunar New Year, we didn't scrutinize it as we're scrutinizing Eid al-Fitr. So I think we're right. You're right, Susan. We have to articulate our standard, our rationale. But I would just point out that by doing nothing, by staying with version 1, that would be abrogating our duty as well. So I think either way, we have to articulate what our rationale is. The second point I want to make is that I think learning, I would like to more broadly conceive learning in this conversation. First of all, it's going to happen 180 days, whether it happens in June or whether it happens in continuous blocks or whether it's split up by religious observances. And I also think learning includes how we divide up our calendar. It can include a district choosing to celebrate the cultures and religions of its students. It can also include something that's very different than that, but we can conceive of learning in a number of ways other than the specific content of what's learned inside, say, a math or a science classroom. And to conceive of learning so narrowly, I think, is to do a disservice to the idea of what a student learns through PSB. The third point is just very technical. I like where Val is going by trying to articulate what our rationale should be, and I want to propose that there should be some kind of population threshold or some articulation of community enthusiasm for a day of religious observance. It could either be teacher availability or community enthusiasm or something like that. I don't know. I'm interested in this community's opinion on that. Combined with that requirement that one of our commenters made, I think that the day would have to be celebrated during the day, during the school day, and not during the evening. It could not otherwise be observed. I thought that should be part of that that rationale as well. So those are the comments that I wanted to make. I agree with Suzanne and Mariah and Helen that we did take a vote. I feel bound to that vote. I'm open to revisiting it along the lines of looking at version 4, which I think is also reasonably up for discussion. But I am very much in favor of the version that we voted previously. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Jesse.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I have 6 comments, not in any particular order. First is that the vote was not a vote to add the holiday. The vote was a suggestion or proposal to the superintendent to add a holiday to the calendar for a later vote. So it doesn't commit the school committee at all. Okay, that's first point. Second thing, I'll call it the school engine, and this gets back to some of the discussion that we've had about data. It takes a threshold of staff, faculty, and students. All 3 have to be at sufficient threshold in order to run this school. If you have too few of any of those, not enough staff to open the building and clean it and get everything done and cook the food for the cafeteria and everything, you're not going to have school. If you don't have enough students, you really can't have school. If you don't have enough faculty, you're not going to have school, right? And so it seems pretty evident to me that some quantitative measurement of where we're going to have to determine when we either don't have enough staff on a certain day, when we, bless you, whether we don't have enough faculty on a certain day or we don't have enough students on a particular day will drive whether we should have the school open or not. Takes a tremendous financial commitment of the district to run the schools on any day, and to stop them and restart them is the same thing. So if there's a population within the district, either of many students, perhaps correlated with faculty, perhaps not, probably in many cases correlated, where you don't have enough of one of those three, that would be the clearest quantitative determinant of whether or not school should be open, regardless of what's happened in the past. I mean, that's coming up. So I think our discussion should center more on, let's understand the quantitative aspects of what we need to run the schools for the town before we make decisions about adding more days or less days. That's sort of second point. Third point is about the summer. Similar to what happened, I guess, recently when there was a short vacation, parents, I know throughout many of the schools, decide on their own when they're taking their kids out of school and missing instruction days, whether it was the day before Thanksgiving, whether it was the whole week of Thanksgiving and then coming back later because airplane fares are lower, after the Thanksgiving weekend. Parents in the district who are going to drive to see family or going to fly to wherever people go are going to do that regardless of whether school's in session. They may not be days of low attendance, but people make their own family plans. They may align with other kids in their families who are in private schools. There are many, many variables in how people decide whether they're going to have their kids in school or not. But that doesn't get to the question of whether or not school should be operating. School should certainly be operating. But if there's some parents who independently determine that they won't have their children in school because they are off from work and they're taking their kids with them somewhere, it just happens, and that's just part of any organization. On the summer plans, it's the same thing. If parents have their kids in camp and camp starts the third week of June or the middle of the third week of June and school's running late, there's no fun learning happening. The kids are gone. They're in camp, especially if they're out of town or something like that, out of town camp or something. So parents, working parents are paying for their kids to be in a summer program. And when the summer program starts, if school ends up getting delayed, that just basically just causes a tremendous, upheaval and chaos for all the summer planning that people have done. So I don't think it's fair to us for us to discuss, well, we can always shift our instructional time deeper in the summer. I think you had mentioned, Stephen, at one of our other meetings about building temperature and in terms of climate change and keeping, faculty and staff and students sweating it through the last couple of days. I don't see that as, and in a hotter summer, I don't see indoors or outdoors that being a really good instructional solution. So the summer plan thing, I don't think is a very solid argument. The next has to do in general with religious holidays within the public schools, and that's the idea of interruptions. There are a lot. If you look through any of the calendars, and which I have and circled all the different interruptions, you can hardly go through any month, but I think March, and this is not anything about Eid. I was just saying March, I think, before we had our other meeting, was the only month in the entire 25-26 calendar with no PD, no half days, no early dismissals, except for maybe the Friday afternoon thing, and it was unique in the fact that it was the only month in an 180-day season in which we had no other breakages. And I think for families with single parents that are working, young families where both parents are working and they don't have grandparents or uncles and aunts to support them, the constant interruptions from September through June impact people very strongly. So if you have a religious holiday that comes along, in the same way, and I'm not minimizing, God forbid, at all, in the same way that if you have a vacation planned and there's school on that day, but you have a flight to take with your family, you go. And so the instructional engine keeps running, and we do an amazing job of doing that, but on the days in which we make a personal decision that we cannot attend, we don't attend, and yet school keeps going. The final point I guess I wanted to make there is about Heritage Months. There's been some discussion tonight and in some of the previous meetings about the fact that we need to show within the school system a respect and dignity for all students across all the diverse religious and philosophical backgrounds from which they come. 100%, nobody's disagreeing with that. I think one option, rather than having a single day or 2 days for any religious holiday during the school year that comes out during the week, is to also remember that while we're teaching about diversity all the time in many of our subjects within the district, that we have heritage months, one for every month of the year, right, that are available. And so when we say, well, we need to close school in order to teach students that their peers observe holidays, I think that's certainly an opportunity. However, another option is just to say, gee, September, October, November, December, right through till, May, being both, I think, a combination, I think, of Jewish American Heritage Month, and I think there's a second one that either Latinx or Muslim Arab population in America are sort of overlap in that period of time. It's wonderful, but that gives us like 20 instructional days in which things can be up on walls, things can be discussed. Students can talk about, we can focus like a month on students during the year. It gives us a wonderful opportunity to share about what it's like to grow up in a different culture and how to understand the other. So I think that's just another set of suggestions I'm making about how we might want to take a look at this. It is, as Suzanne correctly said, it's complicated. There are a lot of decisions we need to make. I believe in discussing this with community members. I think Stephen mentioned it in terms of some of these days off that we have today root back, decades. And that was situations in which we spoke to people who were in the system 60 years ago, 50 and 60 years ago. And the direct answers we got was those were days in which you'd collapse 2 or 3 sections of an elementary school into one room with 7 children in it. And the reason was everyone else was out for, say, a Jewish holiday at the time. Has that population shifted over the last 50 years? Probably. But to Carolyn's point, without the district providing specific quantitative measurements about the demographics and then some survey that will tell us, there's no rush. I mean, we know where we are right now. The calendar can stay the same another year without seriously affecting anyone, in my opinion. But perhaps as well, we can advance it by getting the data from the district so that we can actually make a quantitative measurement. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to wrap this discussion up pretty soon. I think we'll be voting on January 9th one way or the other with a large variety of calendars before us. So Carolyn, if you have something to say that hasn't already been, already come up, then yeah.
Well, you know what? We have this on the agenda till 8:10, so we have 5 more minutes.
Right.
And I have a question for Susan.
Fine, that's fine.
So I'll continue. Thank you. So thanks, Jesse, for talking about data. The data I asked for is about our actual days of low attendance, since that is the legal language that we have. So I'm hoping we'll have that. And I just want to confirm with Dr. Guillory. Dr. Guillory, will you share with us the building leader feedback that you have? Or will we be getting more feedback from building leaders?
I think Carolyn is asking, is that working? It is. Carolyn is asking about the feedback from the summer. So I'm happy to share that with the committee. And then in terms of getting more information from them, I'm happy to, if that's the will of the committee, to get more feedback from the principals about that. I'm happy to do that as well.
Thank you. And Suzanne, I just want to make sure I'm understanding you. You are suggesting that we add Eid al-Fitr for 1 year only.
That was what we had suggested at our conversations both in August and October.
No, that's not what we talked about in August. It was inconclusive, but I just wanted, that's what you're suggesting.
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay, thank you. And
you had a question.
I do have a question for Susan. Sorry, I just want to make sure I understand this. So Your memo, which is super helpful, thank you, says a couple of things. So that we would want to articulate on the record the substantial evidence underlying a decision. So are you advising us that something like community enthusiasm, which was a phrase Stephen used, would pass muster as substantial evidence that a public body celebrating a religious holiday is secular and neutral?
So thank you for the question, Carolyn. I think there are maybe a couple of pieces to that I'll try to take. In terms of the suggestion that substantial evidence be articulated on the record, we're suggesting that's helpful to do because that's the standard of review for administrative bodies taking any decision. So where you have discretion, anytime you're exercising that discretion, it shouldn't be arbitrary, it should be supported by evidence. So that's what we're reminding you in the memo and suggesting that it's helpful to have it articulated on the record, what the decision is based on. I think in terms of the question about what is the rationale and what is an appropriate rationale is a complicated question to answer kind of on hypothetical terms. I know we've talked a little bit about how other communities have approached that question, taking into consideration data and community input, looking at, I know, some different factors, including staffing or other logistical concerns, the importance of having the day off to those who observe, the population size affected, community interest in acknowledging the day, or both. I know, and I think you've also mentioned, this question of whether the rationale has to be secular. So of course you're familiar with the Establishment Clause. Our view is that closing to acknowledge a religious holiday is unlikely to violate the Establishment Clause, where it's not coercive or an endorsement the way that we're perceiving it. Certainly the school can't coerce anyone to observe a religion or engage in religious exercise, but generally government speech is not coercive, where the purpose and effect is to acknowledge institutions rather than exclude or coerce non-believers. And then furthermore, I'd say, closing on a religious holiday in the context of closures for other religious holidays is likely to be seen as an acknowledgement rather than endorsement of any one particular holiday.
Okay, and thank you. And I just want to note in that respect that we have a public record full of requests to close in order to celebrate religion. So my concern is that it's pretty clear that it's an endorsement.
It's pretty clear that that's not the rationale that we're considering, though. I think none of us are proposing.
Well,
to
we're
celebrate.
responding to the public record, and the public record
None of us
is
are
there.
explicitly proposing to celebrate it, though.
All right, I think it is time to wrap this up for
Can I
tonight.
ask a question, Andy, of Susan?
Yeah, if Susan hasn't addressed it, please go ahead, yeah.
He hasn't addressed it.
Okay.
It's following up on something that Carolyn said because I don't think it's accurate. Susan, can you confirm that day of low attendance is not a law? It's not a statute. It's not a regulation of DESE. It's not in any way. We need a rationale that passes a rational review and not heightened scrutiny, but that day of low attendance is not a term of legal art.
Yeah, thanks for that question. That is my understanding, sort of how you've said it. I know that day of low attendance is how it's been phrased in certain materials used by PSB. That term also comes up in some guidance from DESE that's giving it as the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE, that's giving that as a possible reason why a school might adjust their calendar. But that's not the only, in our view, that's not the only possible non-discriminatory rationale to close for a particular holiday. It's just, it's a good example of one, and it's certainly a quantifiable example of one, but not the only one.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, I have one more thing. It's important. Sorry, we need to talk about this. This is what we're here for. I would like to suggest that if we're going in the direction of acknowledging everything and closing for everything, that we have another calendar that also includes Diwali when we come back in January.
And that will push off the vote because we will not have been able to post it on the docket for the meeting previous to the one where we're going to take a vote. So before closing this, our member Sarah had to step out because of an emergency, but she does send word that she agrees with things said by Suzanne and by Stephen. All right, so I don't think that that's where we want to go. All right, so so much for tonight. I would plan to put this on for a vote at our next meeting on January 9th, one way or the other. Thank you very, very much, Susan, for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. All right, this brings us to our school committee actions. There's just one tonight, which is the purchase of a new K-5 literacy curriculum program. I'll hand this over to Suzanne and to Deputy Superintendent Fortuna. Oh, and to Michelle Herman. Hi, Michelle.
I have the easy part tonight. I'm just introducing Michelle Herman and Kristen Gray, who is our interim coordinator of literacy. She's joining us online, I believe.
Hi, Kristen.
We have just finished a very extensive review process of several curriculums for ELA to bring us further in line with the science of reading. And tonight, Michelle and Kristen are going to walk you through the process that we used and make our big announcement about what the curriculum is that the majority of our teachers have chosen for us.
Am I able to share? Okay.
Andy, question, if possible.
Go ahead, Jesse.
This might just be a procedural thing, but you can illuminate it for me. As a new school committee member, I'm confused about something here, and that is that normally, at least I think, say, I'll give an example in policy, we would discuss either existing policy or the need for a new policy. It would be discussed at the subcommittee level for some period of time, might circle around there for a while, and at some point the policy subcommittee would make a recommendation to the full school committee by docketing it, and then there'd be discussion again and then another vote. In my reviewing the minutes of our last curriculum subcommittee meeting, it seems like the process that we're following is a little bit different because we have not had this presentation nor a vote or recommendation to the full school committee on any particular program, and yet here we are talking about a potential vote tonight. So can you explain why this is being sort of handled differently than this, maybe the more standard process?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer, and maybe Suzanne can elaborate on this because you have the documents in front of you. Policy is actually one of our statutory responsibilities. Curriculum is different, right? So I don't know, Suzanne, if you want to say exactly what the status is of the vote that we
Yeah, so in the policy manual, it says the legal responsibility for the selection and purchase of instructional materials rests with the school committee. The process for selecting materials is the responsibility of the superintendent or his designee within the following parameters. And then they talk about the adoption. So they are going to present their choice tonight, and then we will vote on that. So that is within the policy. It is different from the policy subcommittee.
Right, so I guess my question, not to push this too far, is what what's that? Well, I get, thank you. What I'm thinking is, what is the school committee's role under the legal step that you just read at all? Because if we hear this tonight and let's just say, feel we need more information, because essentially we're being rushed because the final vote's already been taken, we've just heard that, and yet we haven't had a chance as a committee to discuss really anything about.
Well, we haven't
So
We haven't taken a vote yet, so.
Sorry?
We have not had a vote yet.
No, I'm saying, but in the agenda, it says discussion and vote on
Right.
staff recommendations. So that's the vote I'm talking about.
Right, so-
Coming up like soon, like in a half
Tonight.
hour, I don't know. Right, so that's my question. What is under, when you read that, maybe you could read that phrase again that says legal? That just, to me, that means we have the authority to confirm the recommendations made to us, but how do we make good agreement? How do we align ourselves with what's been done if we haven't had a chance to discuss it?
So we have had presentation, we had a fairly lengthy presentation at the last curriculum meeting, and we saw the 3 separate curriculums to take a look at. And we were given an opportunity to provide feedback, as well as community members were invited. And you will see tonight that in fact, many staff and teachers have had input. So it has been a fairly long process. They're going to review that process tonight. And then, yes, they're going to recommend a curriculum, and we are going to either approve it or not approve it. We will vote. It is expected that we would approve it because it's their recommendation with our vote, with our feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to proceed. I want to share an agenda with you that will walk you through the process that we're going to look at so that you can follow our steps and see how we got to this particular program for our instructional materials.
It's hard to hear you at home.
How's that? Is that better?
Much better. Thank
Okay.
you.
So we're going to start by reviewing the rationale for selecting new materials. What was the reason behind it? Why now? We're also going to talk about the instructional priorities and selection process for identifying these materials. And throughout the process, throughout the presentation, we're going to call them high quality instructional materials. And Kristen will talk a little bit later about what it means to be a high quality instructional material, but it is what we are recommending for purchase. And then we will announce the program and look for next steps, which includes the vote. So as always, you've probably gotten used to, I always throw these 2 slides in. And I think they're important because everything that is driving the work we've been doing around literacy instruction is in support of our mission and vision for the district and our district core values. And so anything that doesn't align to these is not something that we've considered through our process. So I guess this sort of pertains to the questions that came up just before we began. So how did we get here? This is not something that was just done this summer and make a decision. This process has been going on for almost 2 years. And one of the things that's really important, and I want to highlight for you, is that although tonight we are recommending a particular program, this is really about our instruction and our process for the instruction with students. So about a little over 2 years ago, we were asked to put out an RFP for a literacy study of the district. And so in the fall of 23, the number fell off, but I will add it back in and send it to you. In the fall of 23, we really worked at getting a group in here who knew literacy instruction. And so we put out an RFP, we went through the RFP process, and we hired Hill for Literacy. And they have been doing literacy studies throughout the state and the country. And they're one of the top providers of that. So they came in and they did an analysis of our work. And then in the winter of that year, they provided surveys, they gave teachers opportunities to really look at what was it that they gathered, what are our needs, and they called it a needs assessment. So what we're really going to start to talk about is what happened last spring after spending that time doing the study. So last spring, we brought together what we called the district literacy leadership team. It included teachers, administrators, community members, and it really spanned pre-K through 12. And we talked about the results that we received from Hill. And through that process, we also looked at what would be our next steps. And then the data analysis really helped us know what were our needs. It was a needs assessment. It was an asset-based assessment. So we spent the rest of last year deciding what steps we were going to do to move forward. As we came into the summer, and we'll talk a little bit about how specifically we decided to identify a program, we also did a ton of learning. There was a leadership team that went to a conference called Unbound Ed, and that's a program that helps leadership implement programming in specific content areas. We provided research-based professional development. There's a team participating in the Massachusetts Dyslexia Institute. We immersed ourselves in the MTSS for Literacy program through the state. We engaged educators in the selection process and stakeholders. So this past fall has been super busy in preparation for this shift. And then finally, we also have been working with NTC, and something you should know, and I'm not going to tell you the name of the program, but NTC, the New Teacher Center, they're actually sanctioned by the company of the program that we've chosen to be implementation consultants. So they're going to continue to help us along the way as we implement. And then finally, as we work into the winter of this year, we're going to secure materials, begin PD, ensure that teachers are really ready for the fall full implementation. So two things were happening at the same time. And this is really around the why we're doing this. So at the same time, as we were working, they were two big blocks of work. And one was that Hill study that I just talked about. And the second part was the building of our strategic plan. And one of the things that really worked well was what Hill found was the nature of our current literacy program, not all of it, but parts of it weren't meeting the needs of all of our students, and it wasn't research-based and not completely standards-aligned. At the same time, the goal for the strategic plan was developed to increase achievement for all students by establishing, implementing, and regularly assessing consistent, high quality and challenging curriculum using evidence-based practices. So the finding from Hill really fit into this first goal with the strategic plan. And so one of the things that, because they married so well, we were able to build our action steps to help us reach the benchmarks in the strategic plan. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later when Kristen is talking about our process. So in addition to the strategic plan and the study, we have a lot of research and data that really has led to this work. So the science of reading research has really opened up a field of study that actually dates back to the late 80s, but it really helps us understand how students learn in a systematic way. And when we talk about the science of reading, we are not just talking about phonics and phonemic awareness. We are actually talking through the comprehension process. Our district ELA data has highlighted a persistent gap for certain student groups that we have not been able to close or make more narrow. And what we're finding is that is true with our students that identify as Black and African American. It is true of our students who have IEPs. It's true of our EL students. And we should note that most of our EL students are a level 3 and above, which means that they are at a place where they are ready to learn and continue their reading. I mean, not ready to learn, they're ready to learn when they get here, but ready to move their reading skills forward. And we haven't been able to find a way to do that. In addition, our K-8 students, were not having a consistent experience from school to school. So when they got to Brookline High, depending on what school you came from, there were certain emphasized skills. The other thing about making this shift is we know we have a need to accelerate learning for students who have already met their learning benchmarks. And so we have to address that as well. So that was the rationale that brought us to this process. Which brings us to this next piece. And this is like my favorite slide to present because I'm really excited about this part. So as I said before, we're not only talking about the materials, but we are talking about our model for instruction. And so our model for instruction, and you'll see this model that we've used, this is one of the newer models that the state is using, and it's the same thing for the tiered instruction. Sometimes it looks more like a pyramid, but now they've created an elongated triangle. And what we want to do is really talk about the fact that we need to, in order to use any program effectively, we need a model for our instruction. So what does all of our instruction do? And we are working towards the MTSS model. And what we've been doing is preparing for this implementation of materials by articulating our instructional model. And the materials will be a great vehicle to allow this to happen in the classrooms. So there are a couple of things here that are a little bit different than we normally talk about this instructional model that I really want to call out because this is what is exciting, I think, for educators, for students, is that this model is going to work towards proactive and prevention. So instead of instructing students and then finding out they don't know something and then putting them into intervention, we are addressing all students from their assets and using those to push them along from the start. We believe that all students are capable of grade level learning with adequate support. So this is going to guide us for that adequate support. We've talked a lot about evidence-based practices, so we're relying on the research to support the work that we do in order to meet the needs of all students. I think what's really important is that decisions and procedures are driven by the school and student data. So we will actually be spending more time making sure that we are looking along the way at what students know and are able to do in order to find what they need to learn. And then finally, this is about maximizing our resources so that implementation occurs school-wide and requires all of the stakeholders in the school are in collaboration. And frequently when I talk about that, I think about like when I walk into a building and I'm working with a group of students, I own all the students in the building, not just the small group I'm working with, pushing all students. So Tier 1 is what we're really talking about today. That's that centerpiece with a little bit of Tier 2. And the idea is that we want to make sure that that core is there for all students and that everybody has that access. And those tiers are the supports that we give to students as we move out. The really nice thing about this model is this isn't just talking about supports that students need if they need longer, or I call it more at-bats, to learn the material. It also is to look at students and say, they've met a benchmark, so let's push them higher to the next benchmark. So one of the really nice things is that this is pretty much, these decisions are going on statewide. I actually got 2 emails today from assistant superintendents in other districts asking about our literacy process and are we moving to a new curriculum because they are just beginning the process. So because this is happening all over the state, and I'm going to pass it to Kristen in a minute, but the state, DESE, has provided us with some guidance around what shifts we need to make in instruction in order to have this proactive model, and then how do we get to the right materials to support that. And then just the last thing I'll say about this model of instruction, when we need to address things with students, it's not always academic. So this takes into account academic, behavioral, and social emotional. Because sometimes we have to address the social emotional in order to see the achievement in the academic. So just to keep that in mind. So I'm going to pass it to Kristen, but here is the model that I was talking about that DESE has put out, and I think we've used this multiple times to consider what it was that was important to us in the instruction. So I'm going to pass it to Kristen.
Hi, good evening. So this is the 4 shifts have, like Michelle said, has been guiding our work to make sure that we're using evidence-based practices. In particular, I'm going to start with shift 1 by providing explicit systematic instruction and foundational skills to every child. So, Michelle, do you mind moving the next? Thank you. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so our work with Hill for Literacy allowed PSB to take inventory of our current instructional materials, like Michelle has just said. And Foundations in Heggerty will continue to be used in grades K to 2, because they are both programs are rooted in the science of reading. Foundations provides explicit systematic instruction to establish foundational skills such as concepts of print, phonemic awareness, phonics and word study, vocabulary, automaticity, fluency, and comprehension through the use of decodable texts that we've purchased over the last few years. Heggerty boosts our explicit instruction of phonemic awareness, which research has shown that phonemic awareness is a strong predictor of reading success, and it is essential for decoding and encoding words. So Foundations and Heggerty partnered together provide a robust, explicit, and systematic instruction in foundational skills for our K to 2 students. In terms of 3 to 5, we will continue to use spelling connections in 3 to 5, and we are currently reviewing the materials for foundational skills and word study in grades 3 to 5 in the next year. So when we going through this process of selecting a new ELA curriculum, we knew that we needed to focus on shift 2, which is to build comprehension by engaging all students in discussion of complex, knowledge-rich text sets. Students must have the opportunities to build knowledge and language comprehension by interacting with the ideas in language and complex text. They need to be able to critique ideas and experiences represented in texts and tasks that meet grade level standards. So the Implement MA process guided or is still guiding our selection. Well, it guided our selection and implementation plan in PSB. It will continue to guide our launch and implement and monitor, but tonight I'm going to share with you what we did to learn and prepare and investigate and select curriculum materials. So, Michelle, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so we began the process of learn and prepare by understanding how DESE defines high-quality instructional materials, which includes the following components. It is content-rich. It is fully accessible to all of our students. It is culturally and linguistically relevant, so the culture and identity of our students are viewed as assets and valuable resources. It's free of bias. It is research and evidence-based. It is aligned with our state standards. There is a clear purpose. There are a variety of assessments to use within the units. And it provides opportunities for students to engage in deeper learning. We also look through DESE's Curate rubric to have a shared understanding of the criteria our ELA curriculum materials should include. And we shared that rubric with you this spring, where we looked at the organization of the materials, some academic features such as the texts that were being used, making sure there was representation, that the writing, there was included narrative, informational, and persuasive writing. And then we also looked at professional development for our teachers and the assessment materials. Michelle, you can go to next. Thank you. Okay, so then we began we kind of transitioned to the investigate and select process in the spring of 2024. So first, all the literacy team members from across the 8 K-8 schools and myself, the science and social studies curriculum coordinators explored the high quality instructional curriculum that meets expectations on Curate and Ed reports. We met with each vendor and reviewed the curriculum materials as a team. And our goal was to narrow down the choices to 3 options to bring to the PSB community. So we spent a few days on this process, and at the end, the team unanimously chose the following 3 options to move forward: Art Core, EL Education, and Fish Tank ELA. So that process really felt pretty solidifying and really that we were heading in a positive direction and unanimously, because there was no wavering between the group.
And Kristen, can I just add to that, that those 3 programs not only met the state review, but they also met all 9 squares with high recommendations for a high quality material.
Thank you. The ELA department sent out initial communication to inform our educators and other stakeholders of the K-8, but we're really focusing tonight on K-5 ELA curriculum selection and implementation plan, just so that they understand what our goals were coming into the school year 24-25. Okay, great. So when we returned,
Andy, is it okay to ask a question, or do you want to save them all to the end?
Yeah, if the presenters are okay with taking questions.
Yeah, on the prior slide, if you go back 1 slide.
We go back, yep.
Yeah. So how many other options fit the 9 DESI standards? You say you chose 3, but what were the?
So
were there 5 or 6 others that all meet? There were 7?
Yeah, there were 7.
Oh,
Yep. And so we brought in all 7.
Oh.
And we had all 7 vendors here. And the team had a long time to really dig through the materials and also contact the vendors again after and talk to some other districts before that narrowing really happened.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Okay, so when we returned this September, we sent out communication again to inform our educators of our K-5 ELA curriculum and selection plan, and how they could be, so they have a clear understanding of the process and how they could be involved and have their voices heard and valued. All K-5 staff and administrators had multiple opportunities to engage with the curriculum options and the process, and to process the information as both an individual educator and with their teams. They could attend vendor visits where representatives from the companies presented an overview of their curriculum over Zoom meetings so that everybody could join. And the educators were able to ask any questions that they had about that specific publisher. Administrators and literacy teams set up opportunities for grade level teams to review the materials in person during faculty meetings, professional development day, and team members could share their thoughts and opinions about the curriculum options with their colleagues. It was really invigorating to go in and see some of them have the opportunity to work together as a team to see, I could see this fitting with this area, like across like science, social studies, et cetera, and what they've already been doing. The ELA department also asked our staff to complete individual feedback forms for each of the 3 curriculum options to capture their initial thinking after they viewed the curriculum materials. So the feedback form included like, are the materials user-friendly, clear, and well-organized? Do they think that this curriculum is a good fit for public schools of Brookline? What are some of the strengths that they noticed about the curriculum, and what are some potential concerns that they might have about this curriculum? After having an opportunity to research and review the 3 curriculum options, the ELA department sent out a final feedback form at the end of November so that all K-5 staff were asked to rank order their options. OTL and the ELA department also hosted the ELA curriculum open house, which Suzanne talked about earlier, for our community stakeholders. And so it was another wonderful opportunity to interact with our community members and share the 3 curriculum options and answer any questions that our community has. So now I'm going to share some of the data from the feedback form. So this round 1 data was collected. But before I begin going into this data, I do want to shout out to and thank our classroom teachers, literacy specialists, special educators, EL teachers, and administrators for taking the time to review the material, attend the vendor visits, and for submitting their thoughtful feedback throughout the process. They truly reminded me of why I love working with them and alongside them. And I feel really privileged to work with such a talented and reflective group of educators. So this slide is the first round. Michelle, do you want to
Sure.
show that this was the first round. So if this is just like initial thinking from folks after they viewed one of the curriculum materials.
Yeah, and this was more around the vendor visits and the initial look.
Yes.
So this was the data.
Okay. So as you can see, I don't know if you can see, I don't know how big it is or if you can see it, but the initial feedback from folks was that there was trending more towards fish tank, and the no was trending more towards EL education.
Can you remind me, is the fish tank one the one that's the online one? It was like in the back of the room, Jody, when we were there that night?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and so this is the round 2 data, and so this was taken before we went on Thanksgiving vacation. So this is the feedback. So the first choice for PSB's ELA curriculum is fish tank, with 69% of the staff saying that they would like to move forward with fish tank. Do you want to move on to the next? I want to share also these next couple slides, just share some of the educators' feedback that they wrote. So the lessons are well organized and connect to key themes that are important to our core beliefs in Brookline. The text materials are engaging and grade level appropriate. The timing, framework, and goals for each lesson are clear and logical. And the next one is we're more aligned to state standards. I like the online component because it's easy to modify if necessary. The books are interesting and highly reflective of our student population. There's more support for EL students and students with special needs. The diverse book selection is manageable and straightforward lesson plans. Topics and alternative topics are accessible and connect to other subject areas. And this one we love this one. This is the only program we could really see working within our classroom and our schedule. I remember seeing this when I went to, it's actually from Pierce. So I remember going in and they were really into fish tank, which was awesome. The curriculum seems flexible enough to add explicit instruction for students based on what the teachers are noticing from data and trends of their students. This is taken from a teacher at Baker. Fish Tank provides a clear structure and celebrates teacher autonomy, which is a good fit for Brookline especially. And actually, Suzanne, we were talking about this at our community open house. The units are well connected to science and social studies standards. Books are relatively new, and it provides opportunity for teacher choice, but also gives us a thought out sequence as well as materials to build knowledge. Materials are easier to adapt to student needs than the other programs. And it helps students building knowledge and develop critical thinking skills. Teachers are able to differentiate lessons, and it has the whole package of basically what we were looking for, but also leaves room for us to integrate what is working, like Heggerty. I truly think this curriculum is the best fit for Brookline, which I definitely agree. The fish tank's goal is to develop critical thinking readers, writers, and thinkers through authentic, engaging text that affirm students' experience and expand their perspectives. Each ELA fish tank unit supports students, and this is quoted from their website, is building their knowledge of themselves, the world around them, and their power to create change, which I think strongly reflects our values, our core values in Brookline. So based on this feedback from our stakeholders, we would like to recommend Fish Tank ELA in grades K to 5 for the school committee to vote. And of course, we'll take questions before.
Before questions, let's have a motion. Suzanne, you want to do that?
Yeah, I'd like to move that we approve the OTL's recommendation that the school district purchase Fish Tank Learning as the new K to 5 ELA literacy curriculum.
Okay, do we have a second? Helen, is that you seconding or wanting to ask a question?
I can do both.
All right, there we are. All right, so it's on the floor now. So I have Jesse and then Helen.
Can we take down the thing, though?
Sorry. Yes.
Jesse, then Helen, then Mariah.
I guess my question is, the survey represented what? I have a couple of questions. The survey, what it said, all teachers in capital letters, is that actually all the 100% of the teachers responded, or was this a percentage of the teachers? And the survey results are obviously from the people who responded.
Yeah. So all teachers, all staff were able to have the opportunity to respond. This is a percentage.
So do we know whether it was 20% or 80% or any?
Kristen, can I weigh in on the first? So on the round one data, we gave opportunities for grade level teams to respond as groups or independently. And so we were able to collect from not 100%, but and I can look back at the percentage, but we had a very high return rate on that, and that's why Kristen had a lot of feedback that she could pull from. And on the second one, we also had a high return rate, and it trended exactly the same as the initial data.
When people were making these, when the staff were making these, following it on the survey, to what extent did cost play a factor?
The cost was not revealed to any of the survey participants. This was cost agnostic. Only Michelle, Kirsten, and I knew what the cost was of the program.
So the decision's not based on what it'll cost the district?
It is not.
Okay. Are any of these programs like newer or older in terms of the track record they have in moving achievement forward? I mean, vendors will tell you that obviously theirs is, can do it, but is it borne out by other districts' experience or other information that you were provided?
Yes, and all three of them have proven track records. One of the nice things about Fish Tank is that they're constantly updating their materials and in line with new research, and we will have access to that as part of our subscription and purchase of the program.
And that was actually one of the things that teachers liked, that they didn't have to wait for a new edition to come out. They literally are getting any shifts or revisions of the lessons and units in real time.
Did this align in terms of the results with the teachers as a whole? Were there different grade teachers, like, I don't know, third grade ELA teachers or fifth grade ELA teachers that had different responses, or was it pretty much consistent all across the grade levels in terms of the likability to the curriculum?
That's a great question. It was consistent across.
I
I literally have people like texting me saying, I hope it's Fish Tank, and I've been keeping my mouth quiet.
Yeah, not surprising.
I don't have a poker face, so I was like, I can't see you.
Right. When we looked at it that afternoon at the meeting Suzanne referred to, I'm on the committee too, so I was there with you looking at stuff. I think all the stuff we saw was like printed off the computer or something like that, because there's no real text. Is the idea then that the students will be learning most of this on screens, or is it going to all be provided in print?
No, if you
replaced as new stuff comes out.
if you recall, there were some books there that were samples of the books that we'll be buying with the program. Students will not be learning all online. It's actually a very text-based program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there other, in terms of DESI, this is on the list of like an approved?
Yes, it is.
Checks all the boxes? Okay.
We only looked at ones that were approved by DESI.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. All right, we've got Helen, then Mariah, then Stephen.
Sure. First of all, thank you for this presentation. I think it was really, I like the way that you made it inclusive of all teachers having the opportunity to weigh in. And that, it seems like everybody came to the same conclusion, which is usually a good thing if that's the case. My question is what our responsibility is. What are the costs of each one of these? And well, let's start with that.
Jody, take it away.
And I asked Jody this question ahead of time. So
ARC core was $2.4 million. EL education was $1.2 million. And fish tank is about $350,000. But
So
I'd
it's the
like
least-
to,
yeah.
yes, I'd like to draw a line under the fact that nobody knew the prices as we were looking at this. So price is not
It's
the factor in
fantastic.
determining.
It's okay. You answered my question. Thank you very much.
And that's a one-time cost, or is it like an ongoing subscription?
That is our cost for 18 months, and the ongoing subscription will be $42,000 after that for 18-month increments.
So that's still, that really spreads.
Is that inclusive of any PD, Jody?
The initial expenditure is inclusive of PD. There's a train the trainer model, which we're going to be taking advantage of, which we can come back and explain our larger rollout plan to you. But we're
That's
really
included in the initial 350?
It is.
And who does this program again?
It came out of Match Charter School. It's their program. The author is actually a Brookline resident, one of the main authors. All roads lead back to Brookline.
Right.
All right, Mariah, then Stephen, then Carolyn.
Thank you. Can
Perhaps
you
we
hear
can
me
move to a
okay?
vote.
Can you hear me okay?
Hmm?
No, you can't. Okay, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow up on the cost question, I have three questions. My first one is, does the pricing that you cited, Jody, include the cost of materials themselves, like the student materials, or just the subscription to use the program?
The 350,000 that I cited includes the student materials, plus actually an extra set for special education and EL teachers in each building.
But what about like disposables for the students and stuff like that?
There aren't really many consumables with this particular program, so that cost is negligible.
Okay. And then my second question is if you know of other districts around what they're selecting, because it would seem like it'd be nice to have something that is where other people are using as well, so that if there are educators who are coming to Brookline from other districts, they're familiar. Just curious whether you know that already.
I know Newton and Cambridge. Newton just adopted EL. Cambridge has adopted Fish Tank for grades 6 through 8. Yes.
Okay. And that has Cambridge not selected yet?
I
For K
don't
through
remember
5?
what they had for their K to 5, Mariah. I'm sorry.
K to 5 is they do CKLA.
Okay, so not
But
one
we
of the
do
three we
have,
were considering.
we have connected with schools that already have it implemented. There are schools in Boston and East Boston that we've connected with, and also Chelsea has been doing it for a few years. So they, Chelsea Public Schools, so they have been a really wealth of knowledge of like how they rolled it out and how they implemented it and ordered.
Okay. My last question is just that you cited a lot of educator quotes that were enthusiastic. I was wondering if there were educator concerns that out there and how you plan to address those, if you feel that they're valid.
There are some concerns out there, Mariah, especially from the people that really liked ARC. The programs are quite different in structure and how they're implemented. I think after we go through our professional development and people have a chance to actually interact with the materials more, that'll help resolve some of those concerns.
Thank you.
All right, we're falling about 20 minutes behind schedule, and we still have 15 speakers waiting to be heard. Stephen, then Carolyn.
I'll just say thanks then.
Carolyn.
Of course, I was also going to ask about the cost. So that's going to be $350,000 in FY '26?
FY25, we've set aside the money to pay for it this year.
Okay.
That was part of the budget discussions with school committee.
Okay, so that's already in the budget.
Correct.
And then, sorry if I missed this, PD costs?
It represents a savings, I believe.
Yeah, we had originally thought it was going to be $500,000. PD costs are included in that $350,000.
Okay. And then, maybe this is similar to what Mariah was asking. There's already, I believe, I think, but maybe you can explain, that you've already done some PD and then that was paused. And I'm just curious sort of what that was and what the concerns there were.
Well, whenever you try something new, there's concerns, and this was the first time we took advantage of the Tuesday afternoon PD that the contract allows us to take. So that created some difficulties for people in scheduling. We also didn't do, and I will own this, we did not do a strong enough job of differentiating for the teachers in the room who may have had more knowledge. What we were trying to do was build background knowledge on some of the science of reading. And we didn't differentiate appropriately for teachers that already had a vast amount of knowledge compared to a novice a teacher who was new to this.
All right, I think we're ready to move to a vote. Motion's on the floor. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So thank you for all this work and for the presentation.
Thank you for your
Yep.
support.
I'm sorry. I didn't notice that Sarah had rejoined. So would you like to record a vote on this one, Sarah?
No, it sounds like I'm too late. That's fine.
Okay.
You should make a historic vote, Sarah.
I'll make a historic vote of yes. Thank you.
All right.
And sorry, Andy, I'm going to have to, my coach leaves at 9, so I'm going to have to scoot.
Okay, well, I think in place of subcommittee and liaison reports, let's resume our public comment. So we have 15 speakers left in the queue, and the first one up now will be Beth Miller. The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Do you have the timer there, Betsy, too, so that we stay on track? Can the timer be used so that people know how their times go? Sort of like a bit of-
Good evening. Can you hear me? My name is Beth Miller. I'm a 30-plus year resident of Brookline, a Precinct 5 town meeting member, and a parent of 2 daughters who a while ago graduated from the Brookline Public Schools. I wear a couple different hats here tonight. One is I spent my career in research on public education as a research practitioner in K-12, focused on K-12. And I also obviously bring a parent's perspective. From the researcher perspective, I just want to summarize really quickly what we know about how important a sense of belonging is for student success. And this kind of topic has come up a little bit tonight in other comments on other topics, so I think it's something you're somewhat familiar with. But as a Jewish person who grew up in Pennsylvania, in an area where my holidays were not recognized, where I did feel different, I didn't have that sense of belonging, I think, and I'm sure many of you had different but similar experiences of not belonging, and thinking about how that affected your school experience is borne out by the research, which shows that students who have a strong sense of belonging do better. They have higher test scores, they have higher GPAs, they're more likely to graduate college and persist in college, enroll in college and persist in college. They try harder, they have higher motivation, they apply more effort, they're less likely to not be attending schools, and they act better. They have less behavior problems. This is high quality research. I'm not talking about correlations here. We have a pretty deep body of it now. And why is that? What researchers have come to understand is that when you're worried about whether you belong as a student, you're constantly scanning the environment. When somebody's a jerk to you, you have to ask yourself, is it because of bias against my religion? Is it because of my hijab? Or are they just a jerk? Students who feel that they fully belong can apply all their cognitive resources to learning. And the differences are just powerful in ways that are kind of mind-blowing, really, I think. As a parent, I also want to say that I don't think my daughters, my Jewish daughters, were well served by not understanding more about their peers, about the diversity in their community, and about this major world religion. And one of the ways we do that is when we have holidays and special months, we do a lot of talking and thinking about it in school. I was lucky because my daughter studied Arabic in college, lived in Egypt for a year, and then got a Watson Fellowship to travel through the region. So we all got an education through that, but we shouldn't have had to wait until she was an adult to have that education. So I just want to commend you for the thoughtfulness and care that you've given to this topic. I know you've already approved Eid as a Category 1 holiday. Does it solve all the problems of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim bias we have? Obviously not. But it's one thing you can do in addition to your longer-term strategies related to, teacher relationships and peers and curriculum and so on that will make a difference and really have an impact for students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Next, we have Cecilia Martin.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Martin. My son is a fourth grader in Driscoll School. You already heard multiple comments about the class sizes. My son's class is 25 kids. There is enough room for everyone to sit, but this is pretty cramped. I wanted to suggest, support the addition to these two sections. And I wanted to share something that, a conversation that I had with my son last week on Friday. There was a lockdown alarm that was triggered by accident, and it lasted only a few minutes. But it was enough for him and the classmates to feel it that it was so real. They were visibly upset and anxious about it, and they have to be like trying to walk in between all these small spaces. They finally got to the safe wall, and they barely fit. My son was worried that one of the classmates that was in front of him, and it's in the taller side, that the kid might be kind of spotted in case that an intruder will come. Again, this happened in only a few minutes, but this is just kind of giving a sense of how this, if the school has this additional space, why wouldn't be reasonable to find the budget to support teachers to add these two sections? I know that the budget is a tough situation, but also I feel that The kids deserve this attention. They deserve this high quality of education that Brookline provides. And also one quick thing about the literacy, that these classrooms, they have a third of these kids that they need additional support. The kids are not monolites on the way that they learn. They need this attention, and this is something that can be done if it's a smaller group where they can spot this kind of literacy issues. Like, these are the kind of things that they are picking up when they are in second or third grade, and this is something that need to be addressed right away, so then these kids can thrive. So that's my 2 cents. Hope you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Next, we have Ismail Abdel Dayem.
Hi, everybody. Members of the school committee, thank you for giving us this time and for your thoughtful and considered vote in October to move towards recognizing aid as a Category 1 holiday and announcing it to the PSB community. Your vote brought so many of us a profound sense of joy and community connection. And I was personally moved by your story, Mr. Hefter, about your grandchildren's school experience, because I recognized within it the experiences of my own family. The vote you all took felt like a beacon of hope at a moment of joy, that we could all share together. And that's why it was so disheartening to read the OML complaint that was filed soon after. For many of us, it felt like more than a procedural issue. It felt like an objection to AID's recognition, and by extension to our presence and visibility in this community. It left us wondering, are we truly accepted here or just merely tolerated? Many of us were left feeling that perhaps for some folks in this town, we're only welcome if we and our children remain silent and unnoticed. Without this complaint, we wouldn't be revisiting this matter in this way. And yet here we are discussing how to impose a standard onto aid that has not been applied to any other Category 1 holiday. The optics of rescinding this vote because of this OML complaint are extremely troubling. Consider the message this sends to our kids. And as we said earlier, our children are watching. As town council said, you have relatively wide leeway to choose your own criteria for recognizing holidays and creating the calendar as long as your reasoning is articulated. PSB's published values emphasize the importance of providing an education that reflects the diverse perspectives, cultures, and experiences of our community. Recognizing aid aligns perfectly with these values. Islam is set to become the second largest religion in the United States before 2040. Brookline has the opportunity to join other communities in being ahead of the curve to lean into this diversity and to teach around all of these holidays, to create an educational environment that reflects and leverages the unique richness of our diversity. These holidays are not burdens, but they're treasures, opportunities to lift us all up and give our children experiences that go far beyond textbooks and classroom learning. Last week, my family attended our neighbor's bar mitzvah. As we sat in the pews, we were moved by the similarities of the verses to our own scripture, the shared language and prayers, and the gratitude we felt that our children could have this experience together as friends. And next week, we'll be off for Christmas. And though my children are now too old to wait up for Santa, we'll exchange gifts, we'll visit our Christian friends, we'll wish them peace and joy this Christmas, and we'll likely order Chinese food with our Jewish friends. Celebrating these different traditions humanizes us and inoculates us against the worst instincts to stereotype or vilify the other. Celebrating together, sharing meals, and opening our hearts to one another makes us stronger as a community. And the time and the spotlight provided by Category 1 holidays helps us do that. These different traditions don't diminish our faith, they enrich us. They allow us to celebrate the universal doctrine of loving thy neighbor. This is why we choose to live here, and I hope our presence here as Muslims adds to what makes Brookline a special place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abdel Dayem. Next, we have Isan Laki.
Assalamu alaikum.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. As I said, salam alaikum, peace be upon you. Thank you so much for all the work that you do to take care of our little children. I really appreciate the trust that you have in us as a community to represent us and the trust that we have in you to look after our little ones. Today, I decided not to come prepared with written notes because I wanted to come as I am and how this day has presented itself to me. We do live in one of the most difficult times of our lives, and what we are going to leave behind us for our children matters upon what we are going to do. Everybody's life is finite. We know this very well. But what we do here in our time is just a little bit that we hand over to our children to deal with what's next. And so, one of the things that I say to an Uber driver yesterday as I was coming back from Washington, D.C., advocating for children survivors of domestic violence, is that in the darkest times, it is time for us to lean into our light, to protect our light, and to influence others to lean into their light. That is the work we're doing here today. My daughter, Nora, who's 12 years old, attends the Lawrence School at 7th grade, has for her whole life celebrated the Jewish holidays, the Christian holidays, and the Muslim holidays. Because her family construct is of all those three Abrahamic religions. That's who we are. She has an Irish grandpa, Eastern European Jewish grandma, and a Muslim grandma. And we honor all three the same way. But when we decided to live in Brookline was because it's a community that is open to bringing on more identities and to growing in recognizing us all in the ways, the unique ways that we are. Yet, since kindergarten through 7th grade, when it's Eid, Nora has to catch up on schoolwork. Nora doesn't get to have her Jewish friends and her Christian friends to come and celebrate with her. The same way we go to the synagogue across the street on Marshall Street and celebrate with our Jewish community. So, what I am asking you here is to not look at this issue as unique to the Muslim community. This is an issue that is unique to Brookline and to all of our children. And so I ask that you center the child, the whole child, the social emotional learning of each one of these children so that we can help them advance even more academically. Please vote yes when you're ready. I would love to have Eid with you all when you're all from school. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lecky. Then our next speaker is Raya Khan.
Hello, my name is Raya Khan. I am a BHS graduate, now in my second year at UMiami. As you may remember, I spoke at the October meeting during midterms, my midterms, about why I think we should get the day off for Eid. So first off, I just want you all to know that when originally we thought it was decided to give us the day off, even just as a trial, it meant so much to me. I mean, I was proud of my district and my town. My mom took a video of my comment last time and she sent it to my whole extended family. And let me tell you, my nana, that's my grandmother, was like thrilled. First she called me, then she's texted me this whole long paragraph about how she watched the video many, many times and was so proud and that she sent it to all her friends. So at a time when it's very hard to be Muslim in the world, it's these small moments that bring us joy and give us a sense of belonging in this town. So before I talk more about Eid, I just want to address the motion to remove all other religious holidays, which to me, as a former student, sounds a little bit crazy because I, as a student, did not want that when I was at BHS. Getting days off, whether they were for a holiday I celebrated or not, was a huge break for me. They were honestly like mental health days. So I think we should keep the holidays that we already have off. And also, so many people work so hard to get those days off, so I don't see any point in Brookline going back. At the end of the day, granting a day off ensures that students and their families can fully participate in their religious traditions without having to choose between their education and their faith. For years, this district has been able to accommodate other faiths and other cultures. Yet now, when Muslim families and students request for our holiday to be considered, it's become a question of whether or not we should even have days off, period. Providing a day off for Eid al-Fitr or any religious holiday isn't just about low attendance. It's about fostering a school culture of respect, fairness, and inclusion that benefits all students regardless of their backgrounds. On the PSB webpage, the district lists 6 goals that we strive to fulfill, one of which is a goal to celebrate our differences. We say, we strive to include the full range of Brookline voices, not just in our academic curriculum, but in all school-based activities. Another goal of ours is a commitment to equality. Taking back the decision to give us Eid off next year seems to me like it goes against our ethos as a town. Last time I said point blank that giving Muslim students the day off for Eid sends them the message that they are a valued member of this town and that they are a part of the fabric of our community. You listened to our comments and made a decision to give us the day off. It was like you said, yes, you are valued. Yes, we do matter. Yes, we can make a change. So now, despite however it is packaged, taking back this decision is like taking back that message that you sent us. So I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and for staying this late to hear all of our comments. Happy holidays.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Khan. Next, we have Mona Malafi.
Thank you for having us. I've gone back and forth as I'm sitting here. I did prepare some comments for this evening, and I've gone back and forth about whether I want to use them or just respond to things I've heard. I think I'll email my comments. I do want to just say a few things. The first is this notion of what is education, and your role here as school committee and the trust that has been brought up. And I think that we trust you to have a broader, forward-thinking, innovative, I'm also on the Innovation Fund, creative view of education in Brookline. I don't think we are here counting minutes and seconds in a classroom realistically, and we're talking about one single day. This feels like something beyond this day is what we're talking about. It feels like an issue about identity, about who are we as a community, what do we value, how do we uphold what we value. And I think that this is a real opportunity for us to send a message that we value one another in this difficult world. We have many years ahead of us that will probably get more difficult. We can be a role model not just in our schools, not just with the Innovation Fund and breaking ground in new classes and thinking in new ways about how to educate our children inside the classroom, but we can also be breaking ground as a community in a difficult world in how we deal with one another, how we deal with issues, and how we role model that to our children. And I want that to be part of my child's education. Others, including my husband, have discussed our children engaging in other activities with their classmates. It's not just religious, the idea that was brought up. This is not, nobody's forcing religious obligation on people, or even, and this is not just celebration either. This is part of our commitment to global citizenship. We have 2 billion Muslims in the world, and we have hundreds of households in Brookline represented in all of the schools of Brookline. If we don't have enough Muslim teachers, maybe we should hire more to represent the students that exist in the schools. So that would not be an accurate measure of relevance. And data is important. I agree with Carolyn on that. I agree with you. I agree with the entire committee. I'm an epidemiologist by training. Looking at population data is like, that's my jam. I love that. But I would like to remind this committee also that how we choose our data also reflects our values. What measures we choose reflects who we are. And low attendance data, it's neither relevant nor can it be used to accurately do what legal counsel has asked us to do, which is to equitably evaluate all of the holidays in the same way. And so I would ask us to work together, yes, in partnership with the community. We have a brilliant community, and we would love to partner with you and bring in whoever you would like to have these discussions, because I'm sure that we can crowdsource some great ideas about how to be forward-thinking with the measures that we take to figure out which holidays should and shouldn't be on the calendar. Diwali was brought up, by the way. We had Lunar New Year with our Asian American community that has pushed hard for that. I am all for it. I don't think that these should be scare tactics, talking about slippery slopes. I think that when there's a will, there's a way, and we will figure out how to make it happen because we're Brookline and we can do this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Malafi. Next, we have Hagar Delshad.
Good evening, everybody. So it's kind of surreal and somewhat disappointing to be back here advocating for something that was already debated, voted on, passed, and announced. It's really disappointing to have to do this again, but it's not nearly as disappointing as it was to explain to my sixth grader that the Eid vote she watched pass with her own eyes was somehow being redebated. And just for the record, I'm going to read the transcript of the meeting that on a motion by Suzanne and seconded by Mariah, there was a vote of 6 in favor and 1 opposed to express to the superintendent their desire that Eid al-Fitr be designated as a Category 1 holiday on the 25-26 school calendar. That was already a vote that happened. We were there. We watched it happen. It is truly unbelievable that we're even having the debate that that was not a vote that happened, as if we didn't witness that event happening with our own eyes. As my daughter, Maya, she's here, she could not understand how this came to be, that adults are playing games with her identity and something that she holds dear and our family holds very dear. This same Maya is also the one that makes us watch endless reruns of The Grinch, to the point where we have to tell her we can only watch this in December because it's just too much. Maya also watched her best friend from kindergarten, Husna, get up here twice and ask for this holiday off and share what it meant to our community. At Baker, where Maya attended school and our other daughter also attended school, Maya started in her classroom, KC, with 4 Muslim students out of 20. Every time the classes are reshuffled, there's still 3 to 4 Muslim children in every section of her grade. When Eid came on the very first year that they were all together, a quarter of the class was missing, and I sent a photo that I'll send to you by email to Ms. Curley saying, sorry, I don't think you can really run class today because all the kids are here at this festival. These same kids are now middle schoolers. They're regular kids. They have friends who celebrate Christmas. They start decorating after Halloween and they make fun of them for it. They do Secret Santa exchanges with their multi-faith friends. They have friends who celebrate Hanukkah and they light their candles. Many kids celebrate multiple holidays in their own homes as we are becoming more global and more mixed, and that's a beautiful thing. In our home, we bake Christmas cookies and distribute them to our neighbors, and we make honey cake to give to our Jewish neighbors on Rosh Hashanah. One of them knocked on our door and asked for the recipe because she said that the other daughter made it better than she did. We make it a priority in our home to teach acceptance, love, and equality for everyone. But what are our Brookline neighbors learning about us as Muslims? Is it what's in the news and the stereotypes? It's clear that some people still have a lot to learn about Muslims. What do they know about our endless capacity for giving, helping, and serving others? What are our Muslim kids learning about being Muslim in Brookline as they watch their friends, the ones who ask for Summer Fridays lip gloss to be in their stockings and the newest Lululemon leggings, celebrate their holidays at home with their families while Muslim students have no recognition of their own? How should we explain to them that even when a quarter of the class is missing, it doesn't make up the enigmatic criteria for absences that we're chasing? What should we tell them about the power and meaning of a vote and what it means to give your word on something? Are they learning to trust the adults in the room when they make a decision? Or are they learning that certain members only care about interruptions to the calendar when it affects someone else, someone in a disfavored minority? Just Muslims, actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dalshad. Next speaker is Akiva Leibowitz.
Hi, I'm an Israeli-American Jew, parent of current, former, and future BHS students. Like others here today, I'm here to say that it is our duty and privilege to be able to recognize the special holidays of dear members of our community within the framework of our school calendar. It's unfortunate, though, that we need to stand in front of you here tonight, people of all walks of life, religions, cultures, and backgrounds, to advocate for something that should be so obvious and natural in a community that values and cherishes diversity and multiple cultures. One must ask whether there is a not so hidden agenda behind this attempt to rescind the initial vote. I am encouraged, though, that the vast majority of the school committee members have had this intuitive understanding initially and chose to vote in recognition of Eid as a Class 1 holiday, embracing their liberal values. I am hopeful that this sentiment will be upheld. I'll avoid repeating the compelling arguments my friends have unraveled here tonight and would like to share a personal anecdote and just one other point of view. Before I begin, I would like to respond to the claim I heard here several times that we cannot commemorate religious holidays. If so, then what are Christmas, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, if not religious holidays? But I think this argument is at best void, if not disingenuous, and must remain off the table. Many years ago, when I was involved in establishing a joint Jewish-Arab school in southern Israel, it was clear to us that our school calendar will look like no other school in our area. Despite the inconveniences of being dissynchronous with the vacation structure around us, which was based mostly on the Jewish majority holidays, and obviously who wants to go searching for childcare on a day that for everyone else around is a normal workday, it was clear that to truly embrace diversity, equity, and multiculturalism, we must observe and recognize the different holidays in our community. The initial deterrence of potential candidate parents to the school when they realize that school will be on vacation on Rosh Hashanah and Novi God, and Shavuot and Maulad al-Nabi, and Yom Kippur, and Christmas, and Eid al-Fitr, and Passover, and Eid al-Adha, transformed into deep appreciation and gratitude when they discovered how enriching this experience can be for their children, as well as a bridge connecting the diverse members of the community. So many have spoken here about why it is important to recognize Eid as a Class 1 holiday. I would like to draw your attention to what would be the consequences if we now, at this juncture, deny this change. Failure to incorporate this into the school calendar now, after it has already been voted upon, would once again be exercising the privilege of the dominating majority. It would be the uttermost expression of discrimination by recognizing the days valuable to some people, aka Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Christmas, while disregarding others. Me, my family, and my community benefit so much from the ability to celebrate our holidays without having to make the choice between preserving our culture and maintaining the scholarly routine. It is only natural that we want the same for others. In several days, many Jews around the world will be celebrating Hanukkah, a holiday that in some aspects commemorates the restoration of religious, cultural, and personal freedoms of Jews who have been persecuted by Seleucid Empire. Let us keep this in mind as we relate to the religious and cultural identities of our own community members. We ought to not only recognize their holidays, but also seize the opportunity to celebrate with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leibowitz. Our next speaker is Chi-Chi Wu.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Um, just wanted to say to the members of the school committee, thank you for all of your work and for staying till 9:30 and later um, every 2 weeks. So I think I know all of you, but just in case, Chi Wu, and I'm speaking today as the chair of the steering committee of the Brookline Asian American Family Network. 5 years ago, I stood before you in person that time before the pandemic um, to advocate for Lunar New Year as a Category 1 holiday. I stood with my fellow BaFin members, with community members, with teachers, and most of all, with the students, the Asian American students who led the effort to get Lunar New Year designated as a Category 1 holiday. And so obviously it's with a bit of distress that we heard that Lunar New Year could be up for consideration, that the idea of taking Lunar New Year as well as other cultural religious holidays off the calendar was on the table when we'd only had it as a holiday for 5 years. And I want to read from a letter that you should have if you or should be getting soon from Ashley Eng, who is the student who led the efforts to get Lunar New Year designated Category 1 holiday. I can personally attest to all the student-led hard work put into advocating for Lunar New Year as a Category 1 holiday. Removing these holidays would not only be like erasing these efforts, but it would be like erasing these students' cultural identities. It would be sending the message to our school system that does not see students as individuals with nuanced identities. Instead, it would be telling them that their cultural responsibilities should not and cannot be prioritized. Frankly, it would hurt them. You know, we felt such joy when Lunar New Year passed as a Category 1 holiday. And I imagine that the Muslim community felt such joy at your last vote about Eid al-Fitr. And the idea of taking that away from our community, from the Muslim community, is heartbreaking. I would urge you to bring joy to these communities and not heartbreak. I also want to say, just as an aside, this idea of using the Wellesley option and surveying the teachers as to when they're not there. As you know, Asian American students are 1 in 5 students, 20% of the school system. We are nowhere near that percentage of teachers and staff. BaFin has been asking, advocating, begging, and pleading for decades now to increase the number of Asian American teachers and staff in the Brookline schools. And the idea of entrenching holidays based upon the proportion of staff would be to penalize those 1 in 5 Asian American students for the fact that we have not been able to increase the numbers of Asian American teachers and staff, and is a perfect example of how structural racism works. And I would strongly advocate against that. So please, BaFin asks you to keep the Lunar New Year holiday. We support the idea of adding Eid, and thank you for your time and service.
Thank you, Ms. Wu. Our next speaker is Susan Park.
Hello. Hi there. Hi,
Hello.
everyone. Good to see everyone tonight. Like Chi said, I first want to thank everyone on the school committee for your hard work, your dedication to really being there to represent sound reasoning and to think about the student community, all the families that are represented in the Brookline schools, and really all the beautiful blend of cultures, all the beautiful blend of the different countries that are represented in Brookline. So I'm really proud to live in Brookline. I don't think I said I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 17, and I'm also a board member on the Brookline Asian American Family Network. And so when I heard about the motion to remove all holidays in Brookline, I nearly fell out of my seat. I kind of had to do a triple take. Like, what do you mean all the holidays would be removed. I've never heard that in all my life. I used to be head of the English department at an international school, and I taught English in 11th and 12th grade and in college. And, you know, when we celebrate and honor different countries and the holidays that they celebrate, it's such a wonderful way to celebrate life and to celebrate each other. And as a global citizen, I mean, I want to be part of that community where we do such a thing. So to remove all the holidays, it just, I mean, it's really sad. And it makes me feel like we would be mourning something. You know, it really does sadden me just to think that. And also being Korean American and remembering, you know, the years and the passion of the students at Brookline High School who really voiced their opinion, voiced their feelings about the importance of Lunar New Year. I remember very well many students coming before the school committee, coming before the different leaders and saying how the reason they wanted so hard for Lunar New Year to be a category 1 is because it impacted their family life. They had to, you know, Lunar New Year, you celebrate, you eat, you see your grandparents, you celebrate family. And a lot of these students who came before school committee, they had tests, reports, homework, and they would be really missing out on celebrating Lunar New Year. And so when it finally passed, you know, it was such a celebration because our Asian American students were able to then celebrate this thing that was so important in their culture, you know, in their identity. And to think that after this passed and we've been celebrating this as a town, that this would be taken away, it just really seems violating, you know. So I really, I wanted to come tonight to express that, you know, I'm just really curious, you know, how we got to this place where now all holidays are going to be taken out because, you know, I just love hearing about the different cultures, the things that we celebrate, different celebrations, you know, like, and it's just really sad. And even, I mean, I'm a Christian and
If you could please wrap it up soon. Thank you.
thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Good Friday also, that being taken away, that really saddens me as well. So I'm just here to say, would you please really think about this? Think about the decisions you make. It has ripple effect, and it sends a message of walls. It sends messages of taking things away that were established, and it destroys the trust that's been built in this town. So I just wanted to say that tonight. Thank you all, school committee, for all that you do. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Ms. Park. Our next speaker is Nicole McClelland. Okay, yeah, I saw her in the room earlier this evening, but she's not here now, it seems. All right, our next would be Marina Radueva.
Hi, I'm Marina, Brookline resident, precinct 8. Speak up? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, please,
To be
because
honest,
people at home can't hear you.
oh, okay. Is this better? Okay. So thank you for letting me speak today. To be honest, I don't even know where to start and how to end this. So much has been said, and I appreciate everyone who spoke before me. I wasn't supposed to be here. My whole office that is in Brookline and my coworkers are now having good time in one of the best restaurants somewhere. I don't, but I don't get to go with them to celebrate this beautiful season. But it's okay. I'm happy to see all of you here. So again, I don't know what to say, but one thing I know exactly, that last time we were here, The night the vote took place, I left this building with a joy in my heart, believing that Eid had been added to the calendar as a Category 1 holiday. We celebrated that happy moments with our family because it meant so much to us. It wasn't just about a day off from school. It is about recognition, belonging, and feeling at home. And I thank you all for that opportunity. It took me until yesterday to talk to my youngest child about the complaint filed against the vote. I had hesitated because I didn't want to see the disappointment and frustration it would cause. To my surprise, he took it calmly. He simply said, "Can we file it back in reverse, please?" I said, "Okay, we'll see." I won't go into too many details about why this is so important to our children and our community, as so much has already been said. But allow me to give you an imaginary example of the impact the complaint has had on my family personally, and probably on many other families. Imagine a child who had longed for something, let's say a bicycle, for years. Then finally he receives one. He is filled with excitement and joy, cherishing the gift he had dreamt for so long. But before he can fully enjoy it, someone comes along and says, "Sorry, boy, there's a problem with this gift. Some of the other boys don't think you deserve it. You don't have enough friends or family to join you on your rides. So we're taking it back." Imagine the sadness. My son will stay home on Eid Day and we will celebrate. He will enjoy himself, whether it's a Category 1 holiday or not. There's no doubt about that. But the sadness of having something given to you and then taking it away, that certainly hurts. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Redueva. Nicole McClelland is now on, so let's hear from her.
Thank you. My name is Nicole McClelland. I am a Driscoll parent and on Driscoll Site Council. I also want to echo the thanks to school committee, as always, for your tireless late night work. I see you and I really appreciate you. I want to preface my comments about class sizes at Driscoll by saying I know the budget and financial management at PSB is always quite complicated, and we always have multiple competing priorities, and it's a very tough job. I don't envy anyone trying to balance all of that. But I am here to talk about class sizes. As someone who has supported every override since I've been participating in town government, I was one of the people who worked to get Driscoll passed at the ballot box in Brookline in 2019. I remember what we, campaign folks, school committee at the time, district, town leadership, what we told voters and taxpayers of Brookline. And it was that we needed to build this large new 4-section school in order to relieve overcrowding at Driscoll and the larger district by being able to absorb more kids into Driscoll. That was the plan, that was the message, that was the promise. And that was the main reason for asking taxpayers to foot a $125 million bill and for the Driscoll community to go through 4 years of construction and disruption. And we're here 5 years after the override approval, and with our 3rd and 4th graders in the largest classes in the district by a significant margin. They are crowded 24 to 25 in a class. Every day they pass by brand new, unused, empty classrooms on their way to their very crowded, loud classrooms that don't properly accommodate a lot of their learning needs. You heard from 3 of those awesome, really cute kids earlier tonight about many of the negative impacts that this has on their educational experience, their ability to learn, their ability to forge connections. Now imagine 140 more 7 to 10-year-olds before you. Just imagine it for a second, because that is truly every single day the kids that are being negatively impacted by this. As someone who's been involved in a lot of this in the town, I'm concerned that we made a really big, important promise and we have not delivered on that. It's so important to ensure that the people who lead our schools and our campaigns have credibility. That's critical. It's extra critical now and moving forward in this climate we're in. And I think we owe it to the community to deliver on the promise. I think we owe it to the kids in these classrooms. I think we owe it to the teachers managing a workload far beyond their capacity. There's a point at which even the most incredible teacher, and I will say this year, we are blessed. My daughter has one of the most skilled teachers I've ever met in my life. They have a limit, and they are certainly up against that limit right now. These kids are in fourth grade. They're 9, they're 10 years old. The good news is, in this case, the solution is very, very clear. We need to hire 2 more teachers. So we have another section in our Rising Fourth and another section in our Rising Fifth. And we need to manage enrollment so that we don't absorb beyond the capacity of the sections that we have at any given school. The discrepancies are quite huge. There was a slideshow several weeks ago that showed that, and I can email that to the school committee after this. A last point, between now and whenever this sort of next year solution, I hope, is implemented, I'd really like to ask the school committee to pay attention to what's happening immediately. As I understand it, after winter break, there's often a bit of an enrollment bump. Driscoll keeps seeing more kids coming. And I'd like to know specifically how the district will be placing students to ensure we're not going even higher beyond sort of these already maxed out classrooms. What is the plan if we get more kids coming in? Where are they going? And how are we managing that this year before we have a solution for next year? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McClelland. Our next speaker is Kevin McKenzie.
Hello, my name is Kevin McKenzie. I am a Brookline resident, chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Community Relations Commission, as well as a 6th and 7th grade social studies teacher at the Lawrence School. I'm speaking in my personal capacity only. I want to remind you of my thoughts on Category 1 holidays as I previously shared them. Once more, I am fully in support of Category 1 holidays such as Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Lunar New Year, along with the addition of Eid al-Fitr for the 2025-2026 school year. I encourage you to reinforce the decision previously made and widely announced to add Eid as a Category 1 holiday. It is before you again due to a procedural issue, which has now been corrected. Walking back this decision sends a stark message to the students, staff, families, and other members of our community who observe this day. They will be nothing short of othered and singled out, having something given to them and then immediately taken away. And why? Why is there so much passion to reverse this decision? All arguments made against the inclusion of Eid al-Fitr as a Category 1 holiday, or Category 1 holidays in general, fail to impress me as an educator. The one I am most sympathetic to, challenges for working parents, is addressed by producing, approving, and publicizing the calendar far in advance to allow for families to plan. Running the school year late into June does not compel me either. I teach the same set of students in March that I do in June. Both are the most incredibly challenging months for me to deliver instruction from the entire school year. March, because very rarely do we ever have a single day off from school. We have a long grind full of weeks that weigh on students. Burnout for students is just as much of a challenge as it is for the adults in their lives, myself included. If we do not want to extend the school year further in June, there are plenty of alternative solutions, all of which, in my view, are far more effective, both considering that as an educator, I have to deliver effective instruction as much as possible, and also ensuring the sense of belonging in our schools our students both need and deserve. I spoke to some of those alternatives in my previous letter to you, and I'm happy to share additional alternatives with you later as to not take up more of your time now. The Department of Elementary, Secondary, and at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education says, quote, "We view the school committee as the publicly elected or appointed equivalent of a board of directors of a corporation, which in this case is a school system. That may be something a very small handful of you need to start considering as you conduct yourselves going forward. Thank you to the members of this body who continue time and time again to engage in the critical work that is needed, and to those of you who also model how school committee members should conduct themselves. To the small select few of you who are struggling to do this, I want to note that while you are elected officials, you must not view yourselves as politicians. I encourage you to embrace the mentality of being a lifelong learner and accept the learning curve that comes with your new role as a member of this body. You can still learn and grow into the school committee member your students and staff need you to be. I will conclude by speaking to the deep and pressing need to ensure students feel connected to their school and their school community. We know that students do their best learning when they feel that sense of belonging. Study after study has shown this. Reversing the decision to include Eid as a Category 1 holiday, or the elimination of all of them just because of, air quotes, Eid, would have a disastrous impact. Please do right by your students and stay the course. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. And our next speaker is Arshad Ahmed.
He had a family emergency, there was a death, so the kids wanted to take this.
All right, 3 minutes.
Which we think is a great part of their learning, advocacy.
Hi, my name is Noor. And my name is Tasneem. Today we're here to talk about how we think Eid should be off. I personally struggle with the days that I miss, and I think I can also speak for the other people who are here today. It's really hard because it's the days that Eid is really close to MCAS or on MCAS. And it's really hard to do because I miss it, and that gives me an automatic 0, and I really don't want that. And last year, I almost missed Eid, but my amazing principal helped me, and I didn't miss it. But I just want to make sure that the people in the future don't have them. And I just think it would be so much easier if we moved it, and it would just solve so much problems.
Thank you, Noor. I also feel like a lot of Muslim kids would be disappointed because everybody was so excited to have Eid off. Some even think that they're still getting Eid off because they weren't told. Me and Noor were talking about this, and I wanted to talk about it on behalf of both of us. Both me and her are taken out of school by our parents for Eid, but I understand that it will get harder to make up the work as I get into high school and moving forward. As a Muslim, I feel that it's disappointing that even though it was a very clear majority in favor, that I have to stand here today and further prove why I believe in my opinion. My conclusion is that we should get Eid off because it will bring joy to Muslim kids and they won't have to have the heavy workload the day after. Thank you so much for listening.
And thank you for speaking with us. And our last speaker of the evening is Sarah Griffin.
And I promise to be as short as I can be. Thank you to the school committee for staying so late. Sarah Griffin, I'm the parent of 2 children who have attended the Brookline schools. One is still at Brookline High. I'm also the former co-chair of the Baker's School Equity and Diversity Committee. I have been a member of the local UU church, and in my daily work, I focus on improving government policies and practices for children and families. First, I'd say I echo all things Husna said at the beginning of this meeting. She was eloquent in naming all the reasons Eid should be a Category 1 holiday. And I appreciate the words of many of the school committee members tonight and the members who stayed to hear the public comment. One of the things I have valued about Brookline is the openness among students, faculty, and families to the rich diversity of our community. While not always perfect by any means, there have been attempts to ensure Brookline schools are welcoming and its policies reflective of our diversity. Eid as a school holiday is an important step for the district to communicate support for the Muslim community. From an equity perspective, recognizing the holiday is essential to maintaining that equity and ensuring we honor the growing community of that faith in our town. Educationally, the importance of being seen and that sense of belonging can't be understated. Learning only happens when students feel safe and seen, and learning happens in so many ways, not only in the classroom, but also as students learn about each other and about how to be in this increasingly complex and diverse world as they grow. Adding Eid to the other observed religious holidays would be equitable, encourage a greater sense of belonging for Muslim students, and foster greater learning across the school community. I encourage you to include Eid as a school holiday, and thank you so much for staying to listen to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, Ms. Griffin, rather, and thanks to all of those who stayed with us till the end here. Yes, well, does anyone want to raise any new business? I see none, which means that I will adjourn the meeting now. There's no executive session. So we're adjourned.
Thank you.